I'd like to welcome everybody to the July 1st Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Welcome. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the June 3rd minutes. Commissioners, y'all have had those. Are there any further changes that need to be made? If not, I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
I've got a motion to approve the June 3rd meeting minutes. Do I have a second? Any further? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. All right. Motion passes unanimously. That's for the approval of the June 3rd minutes. Art made the motion.
No, he didn't. Robert made the motion.
Robert made the motion. Who made this? And the second was Rebecca. Excuse me.
You're the man down
Sorry,
there,
Art,
Robert.
but I'm counting on you to keep making this and start making motions. I would like to let folks know we're about to start with item A on the agenda, but before we do, ZC 1909 is going to be postponed. If y'all saw the person up here, the reason for that is the request was B2. Staff has recommended B1, so since there's a B1 recommendation, it has to be advertised as B1. So if anybody is here for the rezoning on Fells Avenue, that will be re-advertised and will not be brought up until either the next meeting or the meeting after. Emily, would that be the next meeting with time, or would it be the meeting after, do you think?
I think I can make the next meeting.
Okay. So if you're here for item ZC 1909, the rezoning request on Fells Avenue, check with Emily. That'll probably be the next meeting.
It will be.
Okay. All right. First item on the agenda is the Greeno Road Overlay, ZC 1908. Buford?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, Commissioners. Commissioners, if you will indulge me just a brief moment, I have a very special announcement, and we wanted to announce this before the meeting when we knew we would have full attendance, and that is we have a retirement pending, and Ms. Nancy Milford, the City of Fairhope, will be September 1st. However, as a consequence of using leave time and completing her duties, this will be her last Planning Commission meeting at the City of Fairhope. So if everyone will join me in thanking her for her service to this community.
I want to know if Wayne Dice talked you into that, since he left. Now, you going to go with him? Is that what it is?
No, I'm going to bake bread for a while.
Oh, okay, all right.
Hey, if that takes a motion, I'm voting against it, just so you know. So.
And, Mr. Chairman, another, I think probably now is probably an appropriate time to make this brief announcement. Commissioners, I come before you tonight as your Development Services Manager. And our Planning and Zoning Manager will start July 29th, and his name is Hunter Simmons. He'll be joining us from Mountain Brook, Alabama. And so this is the reorganization of the Planning and Zoning Department that has been in progress. And so just wanted to announce to the Planning Commission my new title, Development Services Manager. And Chairman, Commissioners, understand we probably have some visitors tonight that have not heard me speak before. They're accustomed to Wayne Dice behind this podium. So I just wanted to introduce myself, that I am Buford King, and I am your Development Services Manager, former city planner, and formerly a city planner. So Commissioners, what we'd like to do to begin, case number ZC 19.08, this is the Greeno Road Corridor Overlay District that we've been working on. For today's meeting, we are not requesting the Commission take action upon this corridor overlay. What we will do is flip through the slides very quickly and then answer questions and then have a public hearing. So we'll do this very quickly. And Commissioners, and for our audience, the first two slides right here are FAQs. For the sake of time, we won't read through them. But we've attached those to a copy of all the agendas, and I think that answers some of the very basic questions about what this document is and what it does. So I call the attention of the Planning Commission and the audience to those first couple slides that are in your agenda. What we'll review here very briefly, though, is the district contains properties within the corporate limits of Fairhope, only within corporate limits of Fairhope. And those are only areas that are zoned, as you see on the slide, which would fall 400 feet either side of the center line of Greeno Road, which is US Highway 98. The northern edge district that begins approximately Dale Drive goes to South Drive. We realize this is the southern border with Daphne. It's roughly aligned with the northern terminus of Rock Creek. The North Village Center is, as you see, South Drive to State Highway 104. This is near Parker Road. You have a gateway district from Highway 104 to Edwards Avenue. You have the Fairhope Avenue Village Center, which is from Edwards Avenue to Morphy Avenue. Then you have the southern edge district, Morphy Avenue to Old Battles Road.
That always amazed me. The gateway.
Commissioners, what I will do here very quickly, we can go back to these slides to explain them in detail. This is your northern edge district, what you see on the slide. Now, this is a hand-drawn drawing as a placeholder in the document. The document that you will see in August will have professionally drawn drawings created by a landscape architect, and you'll notice the build-to line, the width of the landscape buffer. You notice the build-to line of the building. It contemplates a sidewalk on private property, landscape buffer, and then the items in the right-of-way. And then the document itself goes into detail about the types of uses that are restricted in that area. I think probably the most notable thing to point out are that drive-throughs are prohibited in this area. And then we will, at our next meeting, we'll go through this in a bit greater detail. I do have a request of the commission I'll make towards the end. There is a text edit in the zoning ordinance that is relevant to this photo right here. For the sake of time, I'll save that for a future discussion. But this explains an edit we made to the zoning ordinance that complements the Greeno Road Corridor overlay. And this image is part of the visual preference survey. Again, we'll discuss this in greater detail at a future time. What I want to do now is go to, this reference is out of the, this is a reference to what we're creating now in the Greeno Road Corridor. This is a reference back from the comprehensive plan, and it describes where the North Village is and contemplated in the comprehensive plan. So if you look at the North Village Center District, this is the build-to line, the various drawing that describes what is contemplated by the overlay for that area. You notice in the village centers that the landscape buffer is a bit more narrow. This contemplates higher foot traffic, more automobile-oriented area. And then some supporting documents from the visual preference survey that at a future meeting we'll discuss in greater detail. Now, the Gateway District. The Gateway District, you'll notice here, the landscape buffer is much wider. This is where you really make the attractive nature of the entire overlay district, make it visible. Go into detail here about some of the uses, the use requirements. This is probably the most stringent of the overlay districts. You'll notice uses like automobile repair, service station, convenience stores will be prohibited uses. We have some square footage restrictions contemplated by this district. Things like standalone ATMs and ice machines would be prohibited uses. And Commissioners, this drawing right here, again, as I've said a couple times, this will give, when we have the opportunity to discuss this during a work session in much greater detail, this is an example we put together to show how a development would be evaluated when staff is reviewing one against the requirements of the Gateway District. And then some additional commentary from the Gateway District related to the visual preference survey. And then the next village district would be the Fairhope Avenue Village Center District. Again, this is contemplated by the comprehensive plan. And again, this mirrors the village district that we saw earlier. And then the Southern Edge District virtually mirrors the Northern Edge District. The main difference here is that you'll notice the final bullet point that automobile service station, convenience stores, car wash facilities, automobile repair facilities, those are allowable uses in this district. This is a much more automobile-oriented district, and this is, of course, south of Morphy along Greeno. There are some enhancements to the zoning ordinance that complement this that are in your package, and it was also advertised. Those are complements we felt that staff felt needed to be edits that needed to be made to the zoning ordinance to complement the new corridor. And then some closing remarks. This is, again, some text out of the comprehensive plan, and hopefully we have another work session. We can go through this in much greater detail. And then, Commissioners, I'll leave you with this document from 1987, which is one of the reasons that we're here today, and I wanted to put this back into everyone's vernacular. Commissioners, I've covered all of that very quickly. Very happy to answer questions on behalf of staff.
Are there any questions for our staff member?
I've got one question, but doesn't pertain to this. What's a development services manager?
So, Commissioners, I'll describe that very briefly. The intent is to oversimplify it. Basically, going forward, I'll be the keeper and custodian of the subdivision regulations. The planning and zoning manager will be the keeper and custodian of the zoning ordinance. So that manager will handle more of the zoning-centric cases and issues related to the city. I will handle more of the subdivision-related cases. And as we know, the subdivision regulations are used in other places besides traditional subdivisions, including MOPs.
Okay, and then the next question has to do with Nancy retiring. Are there plans being made to replace her?
So, Commissioners, the currently advertised, we have both a planning technician position that is advertised as well as a city planner position. I'm also happy to announce that Mike Jeffries has been promoted to city planner from planning technician.
He was going to leave you out, Mike. Congratulations.
No, I could see his orange shirt in my peripheral vision, or his light
I was
orange
fine
shirt.
just sitting back.
So the intent, hopefully, is to hire 2 planners out of the single advertisement for city planner. So that is in place right now, Commissioner Dice.
Thank you.
That final picture that you had, is the picture still floating around of Section Street back in the late 1970s? It used to be behind Christopher Baker's desk. Do you remember that picture, Nancy? I'm putting you on the spot. The picture that used to be behind Christopher Baker's desk is Section Street looking south in the 1970s. And it's amazing. No trees, overground power lines, signs. It's amazing the difference in the look of Section Street then versus now.
Yes, sir. Is that the one is that the photo that has the word growth below it?
I think
Okay,
so, yeah.
then we do have that. Yes, sir. We do have that photo. We sure do.
We need to bring that into one of these meetings.
We will.
one day.
We will. Commissioners, if you can indulge me for 10 seconds more. What we would like to do, and my request to the commission, is prior to the August 5th Planning Commission meeting, August 5th, August 6th, whatever that day is, would like to have another work session related to this Greeno Road Corridor Overlay District. And what that would allow us to do is present to the commission and the public the slides that we've gone through here, go through them a bit slower, a bit more methodical, and also allow us to see the professionally drawn build to lines and drawings that are in the document itself. And so that's a request we'd like to make, and we'll coordinate that with you, Mr. Chairman.
Ken, if we do that, will we then need another public hearing after the meeting? Okay.
You get to take action, if they're asking for action on the August formal meeting, it'll need to be.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So Chairman, Commissioners, the intent of staff would be to ask that there will be a staff recommendation to the Planning Commission during the August meeting.
So, I mean, just to help me understand it, so far, we haven't really had a work session where we're actually had any time to comment or discuss or work. So if that is a work session and then we have to vote, there's really no opportunity to amend the proposed.
No, we're going to have a work session. That'll be the time to make amendments and changes. And then, as Ken said, we will have to re-advertise it again.
Okay.
And then there'll be another public hearing.
Okay.
Which kind of makes me tonight want to not open the public hearing, but I will open it, but we'll just let 1 or 2 people speak since we've got a big agenda and move forward.
Yes,
since
sir.
we're gonna have
Mr. Chairman,
another
staff defers to chair.
Buford,
Yes, sir.
when will you, or do you already have a plat drawn that identifies the margins on the east and west side of Greeno Road, all the way from Publix all the way to the south, whereby we can actually see both in a drawing and in an overlay, an aerial photograph overlay of where that is. And I'm assuming, maybe wrongfully, I hope rightfully, that we're not splitting properties from landowners, that it's not going to be a straight line, it's going to split somebody's yard right in half, or somebody's property right in half. We're going to take it all into consideration.
That is an excellent question, Commissioners. And to answer that question, one, we have that explained in the FAQs that are on the first two slides. But to answer that question verbally, we do have a draft GIS drawing. We actually have an Esri ArcMap file that does have the buffer drawn in. It does need to be edited, but the intent of staff is to have that and have that to present to the commission, on the August meeting, and we can review it during the work session. And as far as properties that are crossed by either the east or west side of the buffer, the entire property will fall within the corridor.
Or outside, as the case may be.
Yes, sir. So if it passes through the property, it's included.
Okay.
And Commissioners, if you can indulge me a bit more, the reason for that is when we were evaluating how to do this without it becoming an entirely brand-new zoning district was to look at the properties that not only should front upon Greeno Road, but should also fall within the area of influence of an overlay district. So that's how we arrived at 400 feet either side of the center line. If it passes through, the entire property is included.
Is everything within this corridor within the city limits of the city of Fairhope?
Another excellent question. No, sir. No, sir. So this would only be applicable to properties within the corporate limits.
Are there large areas that are outside?
South of Fairhope Avenue, particularly south of Morphy Avenue, primarily concentrate on the west side of Greeno, and to an extent on the east side of Greeno. There are several properties south of Morphy that are outside the corporate limits.
Ken, the last question, would you please get us, or a request, not a question, maybe get us ahead of time the plat so that we can see it before we get into the work session?
So, and Commissioners, thank you for that, Commissioner Dice. Yes, absolutely. The intent will be to provide courtesy copies to the Commission and in Adobe PDF format as quickly as we can. We work that in concert with how the agenda is built, but we'll do that as quickly as we can so you can review it.
Thank you, Buford.
Thank you, sir.
With the understanding that there will be another public hearing and that there will be a work session where we can make changes, if anybody wants to speak to this, please keep it short tonight. Not that I want to belittle this process. This is one of the most important things that we're working on tonight, but it's just this may not be the time to really air it out, since we'll have a work session where we can, let our hair down and be a lot more relaxed with changes. But I do have Larry and Dee Dee Harms, I believe is the last name, listed to speak. Okay. And please keep up with the work session because we love your input. And also Anna Miller. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Anna. All right, in that case, we will move forward. As I mentioned earlier, ZC 1909 should be brought back on our next meeting. So that brings us up to the public hearing, ZC 1910. The request of Provision Investments LLC to rezone property from R2 medium density single-family residential zoning to B4 business and professional district. And the property is on the northwest corner of the intersection of Windmill Road and Highway 181. For those of you in the audience, in this case, the Planning and Zoning Commission will simply make a recommendation to the City Council. Zonings are actually ordinances, so the City Council is the only authority to make an ordinance in the city. So at the end, we will make a recommendation either to recommend or not to recommend these changes to the City Council, who will ultimately make that decision. We do have one City Council member sitting on our board tonight. They always rotate in, so we always have one City Council member here to keep the continuity, and he may vote on this, or he may wish to not vote and abstain so that he can make his mind up at the city council level and not this level. So without further ado, sir.
Good evening, Commissioners. As Beaver said, my name is Mike Jeffries. Work for the City of Fairhope in the Planning and Zoning Department as a city planner. Tonight we have case ZC 19.10. Property is 9979 Windmill Road, and the request in front of us tonight is to rezone from R2 to B4. On the screen, you can see on the left-hand side is the subject property with our zoning map background behind it. On the right side is an aerial zoomed in of where the property is, and the property is located on the northwest corner of the intersection of Windmill Road and Highway 181. And it's a public hearing to consider the request of Provision Investments LLC to rezone from R2 Medium Density Single Family Residential District to B4 Business and Professional District. The subject property is approximately 1.4 acres in size and is currently zoned R2. The surrounding properties to the north is zoned RA, Residential Agriculture. To the south is zoned a planned unit development, which incorporates office use. To the east is a recently rezoned B4 Business and Professional District, and to the west is bordered by residential agriculture as well. Some other zoning designations within the immediate vicinity include R2 and R1, which is a low-density single-family residential district. The southeast corner of the intersection is predominantly unzoned Baldwin County, and the land use for that area could fluctuate depending on the private owner's wishes. On the screen is the use table out of the zoning ordinance. It gives you what the uses for the B4 Business and Professional District is shown. Businesses in the general area right now are Bill E's restaurant, some personal storage units, law and business offices on the southwest corner of the intersection, and then a business office on the northeast corner of the intersection, with a few residential properties zoned R1, R2, and RA. And for a little bit of guidance from the comprehensive plan, the subject property is being proposed B4, which is contiguous to an existing B4 commercial parcel and a business PUD, so it would not present any leapfrog commercial development, which is therefore the application is consistent with the comprehensive plan. This is a view looking at the subject property currently. It's looking from the corner of 181 and Windmill Road, looking to the northeast. As you can see, the property has been cleared. There are no more structures on this property. The previous area was an older aerial view that was taken that still showed some residences that were on there. It has since then been demolished and the lot cleared, and is now, open canvas for anything. Staff's recommendation is for approval for the rezoning from R2 to B4, and the representative for the applicant is here tonight to answer any questions, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that commissioners may have this evening.
Commissioners, do you have any questions while Mike is up?
Well, just one. Who owns the balance of what, obviously these are black and white, so I'm assuming what I'm looking at where it says subject property on the front page, that entire block right there is owned by same owner? Is that right? No?
Are you,
There you go. So the green area is not owned by this owner?
no, sir.
What's the line, what's the black line up at
Black.
the top?
Black line up at the, black line outlining on the,
It doesn't matter. So, okay, I see now.
the brown parcel zoned R2, outlined in black with arrow pointing just to the subject property text.
Okay, I got it.
How many
Okay,
acres?
that answers that.
How many acres did you say it was?
1.46.
Any further questions? All right. If not, we can hear from the applicant or the applicant's representative at this time.
David Deal with SE Civil. I don't know what else I could cover. I think Mike covered it pretty well, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions? If you'll just stay up front, well, I'll open and close the public hearing, And if any questions come that you need to answer, then you could come back up. Thank you. All right, at this time, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. I don't have anybody listed to speak to ZC 1910. Again, this is a rezoning from R2, which is a medium-density, single-family residential zoning, to B4, which is basically a business office zoning. I'm simplifying that a little bit, but it's pretty close. Anybody wish to speak to this item? If not, I'll close the public hearing at this time and turn the meeting over to the commissioners.
Motion, Mr. Chairman. Case ZC 19.10, 9979 Windmill Road. I recommend that Planning Commission recommend to the City Council for a zoning change from R2 to B4.
I've got a motion to make a recommendation of approval of the zoning change from R2 to B4. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda, ZC 1913, public hearing to consider the request of Gayford Village Partners LLC to establish an initial zoning of PUD, Planned Unit Development, conditional upon annexation into the city of Fairhope for property located on the northwest corner of the intersection of Fairhope Avenue and State Highway 181, known to be the Plump PUD. For those of you in the audience, I'd just like to mention a few quick housekeeping items. Number one, a PUD is a zoning. It is not a subdivision, it's a zoning. So as such, as I mentioned on the prior item, the Planning and Zoning Commission simply makes a recommendation to the City Council, and the City Council will ultimately decide whether or not to approve the PUD or change the PUD, because ultimately the PUD is in fact an ordinance, and again, only the City Council has the right to make an ordinance. So we are simply making a recommendation. One key thing to look at on this property is that this property is unzoned. So as it sits, you know, in the real world, we do have to take into account that if we do deny, they have their rights of unzoned property where they could put many storage buildings out there, commercial buildings, machine shops, garages, things that, you know, that would fit within an unzoned property. So that is something to remember, that, you know, our decision here is simply to look at the PUD, but we do have to remember that if we deny a PUD, that, you know, certainly somebody still has their private property rights to their property. So that is something that we do have to balance and be extra careful about in non-zoned properties versus zoned properties. In other words, if this was zoned R1, we'd be looking at this as opposed to single-family, larger lot residential subdivision, where this is, you know, we're looking at this versus, you know, quite a few different possibilities that you can do on unzoned property in Baldwin County. So with that said, Buford, I will turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as the chairman said, this piece of property is currently located in unzoned Baldwin County, and so the request is a conditional annexation. So not only is it a request for annexation, it's a conditional annexation to create a planned unit development zoning district on top of the subject property. As you'll see in the maps we have on the screen on the left, the cross-hatched area is the current unzoned property. The color-coded areas all around it are zoned by the city of Fairhope with their respective zoning classifications. You'll see the aerial photo on the right showing its orientation toward the biggest landmark being the Walmart Supercenter on the southeast corner of the intersection of County Road 48 and Highway 181. So to review the statistics very briefly, both Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Hutchinson are with us tonight and can address the commission. You'll see the acreage of the property. You'll also notice that this falls within Planning District 14 of unzoned Baldwin County. The various PPINs that make up this property are noted right there. I'll explain the county zoning district in a bit greater detail in just a moment. And commissioners, to clarify the neighborhood meeting requirement, just to clarify that that is not a step for this particular case because this is conditional annexation to zoning. However, However, for a point of order, all subsequent subdivision applications require both a pre-application meeting with staff and a neighborhood meeting. So it is likely that if this project progresses, there will be multiple subdivision cases to be heard. The drawing on your screen is the proposed unit layout. There are 3 units with lots within the units. This drawing is for inclusion in the PUD ordinance. So you'll notice the units 1, 2, and 3 going south, actually, the drawing is oriented up and down, but this actually is, the east side is the bottom of the drawing. This is a conceptual site plan. This conceptual plan is not for inclusion in the PUD ordinance. It's for information. Further, this is a color rendering. Again, this is not for inclusion in the PUD ordinance, but provides a description of the concept that may occur on the site. This drawing here, Commissioners, is for inclusion in the PUD ordinance. This is the actual chart breaking down the uses within the individual units. They are modeled after existing City of Fairhope zoning. We will describe this in a bit greater detail in a future slide. So Commissioners, let's do that now. Let's talk about the units. To summarize, what we'll do here is on this slide is summarize what's in this drawing. So begin with Unit 1. As you'll notice, 16 lots. The allowable uses and lot sizes mirror B2 General Business District. Via inclusion of drawing 2 of 2 in the PUD ordinance, the developer is self-imposing the site plan review procedure as required by Fairhope's zoning ordinance. Note, we will have some conditions of approval that will memorialize that process. Unit 2 is replicating the use of R5 high-density dwelling, which is 10 units per acre. And Commissioners, I apologize for the typo in your screen. It's actually 232 units total, not 2,323. That should be 232.
I was about to say.
Which mirrors the request on this drawing right here. So I apologize for my poor typing. The lot size, where it does differ from R5, it basically requests the lot size you see on this drawing, as opposed to the lot size in the ordinance. This also will follow the site plan review process. It will also follow the MOP requirements of the subdivision regulations. Then Unit 3, this proposes 77 residential lots. It is modeled after R3 zoning. It does modify the basis of R3 zoning, which does reduce the lot sizes and does increase the lot coverage. At the time of the development activities, Unit 3 shall follow the City of Fairhope subdivision review process and comply with current subdivision regulations in addition to the requirements of the PUD ordinance. And again, there are some conditions of approval related to Unit 3 that we'll describe in just a moment. What I'd like to do here, Commissioners, let's talk about the comprehensive plan, what the comprehensive plan contemplates at the intersection of Highway 181 and Fairhope Avenue. Now, this drawing excerpt from the comprehensive plan, the star is a village center at that intersection. And you notice the subject property is called out. And Commissioners, it is a bit difficult to see right here, but I'll read it for you. The text excerpt at the right, that's from page 35 of the comprehensive plan. And the top area in yellow says the immediate area around villages are to be more dense, more units per acre, and then transition to lower density development patterns. And then further, if you see at the bottom, the preferred plan allows for commercial development at appropriate locations. The preferred plan calls for both commercial and villages, commercial nodes and villages. And then this particular page is an excerpt from pages 37 and 38 of the comprehensive plan. Commissioners, it's a bit difficult to read here, and so that's why I've got the balloon on the page, which basically says the criteria described in there. It's the burden of staff to review subsequent applications using the site plan review process to determine that the individual components of the development comply with the comprehensive plan. Commissioners, what we'll talk about here very briefly is just want to explain where this property falls in relation to Baldwin County zoning, because it's not zoned by the City of Fairhope currently. It's not zoned by Baldwin County. So this falls right on the border between planning districts 14 and 17. With the exception of the areas zoned by the City of Fairhope, Baldwin County Planning Districts 14 and 17 are unzoned by Baldwin County, with a majority of District 14 completely unzoned. In contrast, District 15 is completely zoned by either Baldwin County or the City of Daphne. And you can see in the drawing on your left, District 14 with District 15 above it. You can see the contrast because the yellow color shows areas zoned by Baldwin County. The green area are areas zoned by the various cities. And then you see on the drawing on the right, it's a bit small, a little bit easier to see on the larger screens in the room. The subject property is denoted. So, Commissioners, we'll make some staff comments before we get to our some general comments, and then some staff recommendation comments, and then we'll come up with a staff recommendation for you. So, the location of the development is within a village center as contemplated by the comprehensive plan. The proposed uses and density transition of the proposed development are also contemplated by the comprehensive plan. As we stated earlier, but illuminating right now, if the subject property remains unzoned, the City of Fairhope will have no regulatory authority over the uses within the proposed development. Though the City of Fairhope would have subdivision and multiple occupancy project authority over the development, the number of apartment units, height of apartment units, the number and types of retail stores, number of parking spaces, many other use-related items would not be regulated by the City of Fairhope if the property remains unzoned. Unit 2, basically, let's give a breakdown of what Unit 2 requests. It requests the lot width deviation for Table 3.2. We talked about it a bit earlier. As you see correctly right here, 230 apartment units will be limited to 30-foot maximum building height in addition to other required dimensions in Table 3.2 because there's not a request to deviate from those requirements in the zoning ordinance. So again, a multiple occupancy project and a site plan review will be required for this unit. Then Unit 3, we talked about earlier, is modeled after the R3 zoning districts. What we'll talk about here is how it differs. So the request is for 50-foot wide lots in lieu of 65-foot wide lots. The request is for 6,000 square foot lots in lieu of 7,800 square foot lots. And then 20-foot front setbacks in lieu of 30-foot front setbacks. 5-foot side setbacks in lieu of 8-foot side setbacks, and 45% lot coverage in lieu of 35% lot coverage. And then, without getting too detailed here, but I wanted to preserve it in here, there's a requirement to identify some street side setbacks in one area that are not reflected in another because they have an additional common area. But again, this shall follow the City of Fairhope subdivision review process, comply with the current subdivision regulations, in addition to whatever requirements are in this PUD ordinance. This development will trigger the buffer zone landscaping requirements in Ordinance 1444, which is the tree landscape ordinance. So as a result, a 10-foot wide buffer utilizing the options for the buffer within that landscape ordinance must be constructed along the full length of Unit 3. This buffer will be reviewed at the time of subdivision approval of Unit 3, and as a condition of approval shall be constructed in concurrence with any land disturbance in Unit 3. So we wanted to memorialize that as a condition of approval. Also, as a condition of approval, a master drainage plan for the entire site shall be submitted with the subdivision that creates Units 3. And for everyone, to refresh everyone's memory, drainage plans shall meet the requirements of the subdivision regulations, including the requirements for low-impact development techniques. Subject application is a conditional annexation, therefore items such as sidewalk placement, internal circulation, landscaping, etc. will be addressed via the subdivision site plan and MOP process. Also, this subdivision process almost certainly triggers a traffic impact study, which then triggers a roadway improvement plan, which will have to be coordinated with ALDOT and included with the various subdivision applications as appropriate. And so we go on to, there's some housekeeping items in here, Commissioners. We talk about in Unit 3 to comply with the subdivision regulations. We're requesting via condition of approval that the side setbacks be increased to at least 7.5 feet wide. That complies with the subdivision regulations. We also want to note that the new comprehensive plan to be funded by BP Restore Acts, that is imminent when that funding becomes available. So that could result in a new comprehensive plan giving additional guidance that will be followed as this development unfolds over the coming years, should it be approved. And also as a reminder that the Greeno Road Corridor Overlay District that we talked about earlier, there are some provisions within that that are also routine edits of the zoning ordinance that may be applicable to this site for things such as convenience stores, service stations, car washes, those types of things. Those routine edits to the zoning ordinance, should they be approved, could possibly be in place if any of those uses are included on this particular development. So the staff recommendation is approval of, staff recommends that case number ZC 19.13 shall be approved for the PPINs noticed there. Condition 1, a master drainage plan as prepared, shall be prepared for the entire site, included with the initial subdivision application that creates units 1 through 3. Commissioners, this is not in your written staff report, but we do need to verbalize the following conditions of approval. And as we mentioned earlier, condition 2, side setbacks in unit 3 shall be at least 7.5 feet wide, with the adjustments to the side setback and lot coverage reflecting on drawing 2 of 2 prior to submission to the city council for consideration. So increasing those side setbacks will affect the lot coverage, and this is just a routine edit, but we need to reflect as a condition of approval. Also, as we mentioned earlier, a 10-foot wide landscape buffer compatible with ordinance 1444 shall be constructed along the full width of the western side of unit 3. We're requesting that be concurrent with land disturbance in unit 3. So if any land disturbing activities, should this development be approved when they occur in unit 3, that buffer would be developed in concurrent with land disturbing activities in unit 3. Items 4 and 5 are some housekeeping items that we wish to memorialize via condition approval, and to make certain that as you see, the site plan review process in the appropriate section in the zoning ordinance shall be mandatory for each lot within units 1 and 2. And then the City of Fairhope subdivision regulations shall be applicable to all lots within the PUD. Commissioners, Mr. Hutchinson with Goodwin Mills and Kaywood is here tonight on behalf of the developer, and I'm happy to answer questions of staff.
Does anyone have any questions for Buford while he's up here?
No, I got some questions later on, but go
Okay.
ahead.
All right, thank you, Buford. In that case, we'll go ahead and ask Scott to come up and make a presentation on behalf of the developer.
Yeah, so the left, yeah.
Scott Hutchinson with Goodwin Mills and Kaywood. Thank Buford for that very detailed presentation. I really have nothing to add to that other than just to answer any questions that you have. And if, after the public hearing, if there's any comments that I need to address, I'd love to have a chance.
I do
Yes, sir.
have one comment or question that you think that deserves an answer, but we talk about the drainage system in there, and, I'm sorry. We talk about the drainage system for the unit itself, but it will extend beyond. I know White Grove has some issues with drainage now, and we're talking about actually trying to improve that drainage in there.
Yes. What we're looking at doing is an overall comprehensive drainage plan for the whole development.
All the
And-
off-site
and
drainage comes
Instead
with
of,
it.
instead of, what the staff is asking for is, rather than as you get each subdivision or each site plan, they do their own drainage, rather than look at it that way, we do an initial overall master drainage plans that addresses water coming in, water going off, adjacent problems, things like that, and then follow that as it's developed.
And I do want to make one other thing clear. We're talking with the developer from the utility perspective to look at upsizing the lift station that is going to be required for that, and bypassing some of the flow that currently goes to the White Grove neighborhood to try to relieve some of the sewer issues, and as we develop our transmission capacity from, we're having to work ourselves from the plant out. But that's definitely one of the projects that we're looking to use to make that comprehensive plan for transmission capacity meet not only today's requirements, but we're looking to meet, maybe 20 years out as well. So just so everybody's aware of that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Scott, how you doing?
Good.
Good. Two things. You're going to end up doing having to do a traffic study, obviously.
Probably so, yes.
Are y'all in a position to understand that there's more than likely going to have to be some major improvements to Fairhope Avenue?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, big time. I've heard in the past that when everything is four-laned along 181, you know, it solves all the problem. You don't have to do anything but go to Highway 64 and 181 at 7 o'clock in the morning to understand how that didn't improve anything.
That would be nice.
Yeah, and, but the second thing, I really don't see, unless I'm missing it somewhere, where is your common area that will be utilized by this many people? I mean, I don't see anything associated with active recreation, and if you're gonna have, I'm assuming all these are apartment complexes with 232 units, where all these people gonna play?
Okay. Well, okay. Can I do the mouse? That work?
There you go, yeah.
Okay. The laser won't work on these TVs. So common area, again, it's three units. 1, 2, 3. And in the first unit, the commercial retail, those will be developed as site plans when they come in, and probably no common area really for those, because those are commercial uses. The apartment area, again, this is just a conceptual layout to help people understand what it could look like, or probably will look like. And within that, it's not individual lots in there. So essentially, every area around the apartments is common area. Whether you could take some of the drainage features and use those as recreation. You have the clubhouse here with an area right beside it for recreation, and then you have.
But how big, okay, let's take that as an example. How big is that?
Oh dear.
I mean, if you got 1 acre right across the lot line between your third and your second units, that's 1 acre right up there. That's not bigger than an acre. I'm just thinking of all the, one of the issues certainly in Fairhope, we don't have a lot of apartment complex projects here. And people mostly with young children are going to be in those places. And I mean, they've got, especially for that many people, that much traffic, there's got to be a place that is collectively that they can go. And I would encourage you to, I don't need an answer right now. You're still way down the line before you're going to get approval, but that to me is a big deal. Something where they can go beat up on each other and not bother their parents later in the afternoon.
I understand. And there's, as you can see with the density, you can move buildings around and, for example, move these down, stretch things out to create some bigger areas. So there's ample room to do something.
All right, good.
Scott, while you've got the pointer, can you put your pointer on the commercial lot number 16 on that same rendering?
Is that it?
Now, if you can take, you're right.
I just turned 50, Lee. I can't see anything anymore.
That's fine. Let's do it on the color one. That last one was fine. But you see lot 16.
Right here.
Yes.
Okay.
Now look over at lots number 1 through 4, and in unit 3, lots 1 through 4 and 35 through 38.
That's, all right, 1 through 4 is down here.
Yeah, and then 35 through 38.
Okay.
They're right below. They're
Right,
just
okay.
due to the east of those.
Yes, sir.
I'd love to see y'all flip-flop in your design and switch those lots 1 through 4 and 35 through 38 into unit 1 under the commercial, and then take lot 16 and incorporate that into unit 3 under the residential, basically flip-flop those. Fairhope Avenue has a lot more commercial on it, both across the street and up and down, car shop, et cetera. And Gayfer, at this time, doesn't have any commercial on it. and has pretty much grown residentially, and that backs up to, on the other side of your 2 lots, there's residential there. And I think the less commercial intrusion on Gayfer, the better. And then as far as, the residential lots, if you put commercial, the land on the west side of that is not at this time developed. And then whenever he or she comes up on that property to, whomever in the future brings that up to develop it, that would give them more options to tie in. And then that, connectivity could go through lot number 5. You'd only lose, maybe not even lose any residential lots if you do it that way. But I think that the commercial would be more appropriate on Fairhope Avenue and the residential more appropriate on Gayfer.
We will certainly consider that, again, with the setback condition of approval, moving from 5 to 7.5. We will likely increase the size of the lots for 50, make them a little larger. So we'll be probably losing several lots anyway, residential lots anyway, and that could possibly work out better for us. So it's something we can certainly consider.
I think it would be more valuable commercial on Fairhope Avenue anyway. That's the road that Walmart's on and the road that the heavier traffic's on. So to keep that commercial would probably make more sense for y'all's development anyway.
Would you be talking about eliminating the street access at that point?
I would think you'd eliminate the street access and then do a stub out to the property to the west.
Would you still have this connection here?
You could,
Do
sure.
you have that in mind?
Yeah, you'd have to do something to have,
Okay.
you definitely need to have the residential be able to go out on Fairhope Avenue.
Just take it up to where the intersection is?
Yeah, it could be
Yeah.
moved a block this way, a block
Just
that way, or left
Scratch
exactly where
that
it
and
is.
make that
Commercial.
commercial. And then swap that with
Mhm.
that. Okay.
Right now, I don't, with the exception of, banks at the very end of the other end of Gayfer and one, an attorney's office and a lawn and garden, I can't think of much commercial on Gayfer at all.
We'll certainly kick that around real quick and see if that
Okay.
works.
Any other questions or comments for the developer? If not, I'll go ahead. Scott, if you don't mind staying up front, I'm going to open the public hearing, and I'll just take a list of all questions and let you answer them at the end.
I have one more question.
Oh, yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Scott, when I was driving around today trying to look at where it was, that main artery of the entrance would be coming out of, is that, what is that that's right there? Is that the pecan factory? Is that
Right,
what-
right.
no,
Are you
the
talking
main
down here?
entrance on 181 where you have your little circle?
That's the pecan place.
Okay.
Anything else, commissioners? All right, thank you, Scott. I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. I've got 5 people listed to speak. The first is Joshua Gammon. Yes, sir. And even though I mentioned your name, if you'll say your name to Emily and give her your address, and you can speak into this one up here.
Oh, this one up here?
Yes. And give her your address so we can put it in our public
Joshua
record.
Gammon, 20545 Blowery Drive. I'm not sure how many questions I get, but I have a few. First, I've heard a couple times they say with the traffic impact, maybe, should, might. Can we get that, like a necessary thing for the development?
Okay.
Excuse me, would you pull the mic up a little bit?
Sorry, I'm a little tall. It's hard to adjust things. The next question is, what is the estimated population increase for that area? They say a lot of units, but how many bedrooms? That can be a large increase for what's right now a pretty quiet street on Gayfer. They mentioned that the MOP would still be required without a PUD approval. So my question is, what's the point of having a PUD approval? Maybe a little bit more minutia. Is it just that they want to be included in the city of Fairhope to get that benefit?
That was a discussion of them staying out of the city limits versus coming
Right.
in the city limits. If they come in the city limits, it would come in under a certain zoning, generally R1. So they're asking for a PUD subject, annexation subject to their PUD. If they decide not to be annexed, then they can, do whatever they will that fits within the unannexed property. However, if they do an apartment, it would come under an MOP approval, which stands for Multiple Occupancy Project. And in that, basically, we have very, very little rights. In most areas, a multiple occupancy approval would go purely to staff. And so our rights on that as a board are basically, does this meet the building codes? Not much more beyond that.
Right, okay, thank you. And what would the gap or space be between White Grove and the proposed development? I can't see where Lowry Drive is on this map.
Okay.
And I'm not sure, because we talked about earlier about that business development. Opelika Road, I don't know if that was held up as a model or a nightmare, because having to come from Auburn, Opelika Road's the worst part of Auburn. That's all.
Mr. Chairman, can I interject on that?
Certainly.
So I apologize if that was confusing. When we have our work session prior to the next Planning Commission meeting, where we go through the Greeno Road corridor in a very detailed fashion, I'll explain that supporting document.
Okay. Thank you, Buford. All right, next person on the agenda is Arthur Pouncey. Questions answered. Arthur will not speak. Matthew Jones is the next person listed. Yes, sir. And again, Mr. Jones, if you'll state your name and address. I think I pronounced it properly. Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Yes, you did pronounce it correctly. My first question is, those 40-some-odd lots that border the far east side of this property, what are those?
I will ask the developer to go into those more when he comes up, but those are single-family residences.
Because of those will not be apartment buildings?
No.
Well, that's subject to change?
No, that Unit 3, he's got Unit 1, 2, and 3, so Unit 3 will only be single-family residences. Buford, can you show the Unit 3 up in the top?
The yellow lots at the top.
That rectangle,
Those are
all the
single.
residential lots will be there. Now, that could be, that design could change a little bit, but apartments and commercial will not be brought in there. All the commercial would be in Unit 1, all the apartments in Unit 2, and all the single-family residential in Unit 3.
And did I understand you correctly? You made a recommendation that we do away with the access road connecting to Gayfer Avenue?
No, sir. I was requesting that if you look, there's a commercial lot right below residential lot number 60 through 65. And I was suggesting that that area become residential to keep commercial intrusion off of Gayfer, since Gayfer, for the most part, like with y'all's subdivision, is residential. So my suggestion was move that over to Fairhope Avenue, which has a lot more commercial on it and will probably be more valuable land to them, since that's the road that Walmart's on, and most people like their commercial to be near Walmart, it seems
That's
like.
just a recommendation then?
At this point, but,
Okay.
it could
Will there
become.
be further hearings on this? Oh, and by the way, is there a way for me to get a copy of what we've just witnessed, because it was not in the,
If you'll give Emily your email address.
okay?
She can forward the packet that,
This-
I'm sorry, it's on the website, yes.
You'll be able to watch this meeting live or recorded.
Okay, can you give me the website? So all that's on
Yeah,
there?
go to planning and it's
Okay.
on there.
City of Fairhope.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am, you can search it.
That's fine. All right, no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Jones, appreciate that. Lindy Peters is the next person listed.
I'm Lindy Peters at 11391 K Falls Street. I live just east of 181 on 48, and I can see so many entrances come off onto 48, and especially at the intersection of 48 and 181, there are two entrances right at the corners. That's going to be a nightmare. People trying to turn left and right, and if 181 is expanded to 4 lanes, the number of people trying to turn right is going to slow down traffic getting through the light going into Fairhope. number of people turning right is going to stop the traffic going southbound on 181. And that doesn't even include people stopping in the road to turn left, the opposite direction. I think there's way too many entrances into this place. And it will, I don't know how the people of Idlewild will ever be able to enter or exit their subdivision. The traffic will be stopped, you know, and coming in from Fairhope. If people stop at those entrances to turn left, nobody will be able to go eastbound. So I think a traffic study is very much warranted, and I don't know if you guys have control of the number of entrances onto 48 or 181?
On 181, we do not. I can answer that. Buford, can you answer about 48 in Gayfer? I'm not sure the answer to that.
Well, the short answer, Commissioners, is that this commission certainly has the ability through condition of approval to change or recommend changes to the arrangement of the drawing included, the site plan that's included in the PUD ordinance. So that is possible. And then, of course, you have whatever roadway improvements are included in a roadway improvement plan that is the result of a traffic impact study. So yes, on both accounts, because ultimately the request before the commission today is to forward a PUD to the city council for consideration. So this commission can certainly make recommendations of changes to it.
I can see the speed on 181 and the huge trucks that come up and down there. If people are trying to turn left to go northbound on 181 from this, it's very, very dangerous. I think it should be controlled by light and to limit the number of entrances and exits and nothing even close to the intersection. That will just completely stop traffic. So, I don't know a whole lot about this stuff. This is my first time. But immediately I could see the problems. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next person on the agenda is Megan Talbert.
Good evening. Yes, I'm at 10440 Gayfer Road Extension, so I'm right on the other side of 181. Not to beat a dead horse, but the traffic is my first concern. It's a major intersection right there at any time of day. Since I'm on Gayfer Extension, I'm seeing the commuters come through 7 o'clock in the morning, noon, 5. So that's a strong issue. Keeping the commercial off of Gayfer is important to me, and I know it's important to a lot of residents. I'm on the HOA board there in Gayfer Estates Plantation. My last concern that I just want to reiterate is the drainage plan. I'm not an engineer. I don't develop neighborhoods, but I have been on the HOA for a few years in my neighborhood, and we are basically beside Falls Creek, so just a little bit down, and we have major flooding, drainage. We've spent close to $30,000 on getting drains cleaned out, getting retention ponds cleaned out to try to keep the flow of the water. We have one massive retention pond there on Gayfer Estates. It sits right across from my house, so I get to watch it and pay attention to it. It basically floods up to where the road, there's a ditch lining in front of the houses, and that retention pond will meet the water in the ditch, I mean, in just 30 or 45 minutes worth of solid rain. So I'm concerned more houses push water down. Again, I'm not an engineer, so I don't know how it all works and stuff, but drainage, I think, is a real issue.
All right. Thank you,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Talbot. Appreciate it. And I think we should make a rule, people can't wear T-shirts for restaurants in Fairhope at this time of day when we're hungry. Takes my mind off the meeting. I'm like ready for some tacos. All right. That's everybody whose name is listed to speak. Would anybody else have something they'd like to say that's not redundant? If so, just come up and state your name. Yes, sir. State your name and your address, please, sir.
My name is Frank Connell, 206-20605 Laramie Drive. My house backs up to this 60-some-odd units that we have here. I sent an email to Emily here, and she got it. But my concerns are, number one, I have a water problem that I've had ever since I've been there, and that needs to be resolved. When we get an inch or more of rain, I can have in my backyard up to 2 to 3, 4 inches of water. The far, give me directions right, northeast corner of my property doesn't even have grass anymore because of all the water and stuff. I can't do anything with it, it's just kind of a muddy mess. So I'm concerned with that. But my major concern is the boundary between our properties on Lowry Drive and the new development. Right now, there's a buffer, I guess it's 20, 30 feet long with trees and things, and most of that property, I believe, belongs to Clump, not us. I have a large oak tree there that's right on the boundary. It's actually on my side, but there's branches that go out on the other side, and if you know an oak tree, it needs to be balanced. So if we don't have any control on what happens to that other side, they can cut that oak tree branches off, and when they do that, they kill my tree too, and so I'm done with, I'd have to take mine down. So the major concern is the buffer between our division and the new development. I would contend that the best place to put a large, high fence would be on the east side of the current treed buffer. And that would protect the trees that are in that area now. And if you did that, I'd be happy.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thanks.
All right, so far, I'm going to ask about the traffic study, the number of residences, the buffer between White Grove and the new development, the number of entrances on Fairhope Avenue, and question of where the water will go. Anybody else have any further questions for the developer? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. If you'll come up, state your name and your address, please, sir.
How are you? My name is Ben Pace. My address is 20585 Lowry Drive. And I jotted down a number of questions, and thankfully, a lot of them have been answered. About a buffer, 10 foot was mentioned. Is that the width between?
I'm going to ask that question further and get it described better.
Yeah,
Yes,
my
sir.
back fence.
Item
and
3, condition of approval number 3. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Because presently that, the wooded area that my neighbor described is probably 20 to 30 feet wide in different areas, and serves quite well as a natural buffer between White Grove and the runway as it is now. So that's one thing. The other concern I have is on the Unit 3, they seem to be quite narrow. They're 50-foot lots, is that correct? 50-foot wide? Okay, and the easement on either side is?
I'll ask him these questions. We don't get back.
Oh.
I'm going to ask him every one of
Okay.
these when we get
How, I guess my question is, how wide of a house could be put on this lot? I would not be in favor of 77 shotgun-style houses in Unit 3.
Sure.
Okay? And now, 181 will be widened all the way past Walmart eventually?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Well, not to beat a dead horse, but there is a problem with the water. We, going up 181, we have not been able to cross Fairhope after a good hard rain. It just floods. after Walmart was put in, my subdivision, River Mill, has a lot of flooding. So that's a concern. But in addition to that, I haven't seen a sketch of what this will look like, and I would like to ask, how would you describe it? Will it be, I've been at some of these meetings before, and builders have said it will be upscale. Would you consider it upscale? Would you consider it affordable housing? What name, label could be put on this?
Well, we can't ask about the rents or whether it's affordable housing or not by law. But I can tell you, you've got Unit 1, Unit 2, and Unit 3. At this time, we're going to make a recommendation to the city council about a zoning, whether or not to approve this as a zoning. Later, then, if the city council approves this or approves some changes similar to this, these Unit 3 would have to come back underneath the subdivision plan and be looked at then as far as the design, green space in more detail, et cetera, buffering in more detail. Unit 2 would have to come in under a multiple occupancy review, and then the items in Unit 1 may or may not have to come back for site plan reviews. I would assume, the largest lot there probably would. The site plan review.
Mr. Chairman, if I can interrupt, I apologize for interrupting you, but note item 5 on the conditions of approval that makes the site plan review mandatory.
Okay. Well, that answers. So even lots 1 through 16 would have to come back with a site plan review. Without that item 5, most of them probably would anyway. Site plan review is required by either the size of the footprint or the percentage of the lot that a commercial building takes up. But regardless, Beaufort has it covered that every item will have to come back for site plan review. So all of this will be seen, each of these will be seen again, more for the aesthetic items as well as the drainage. They can't draw a drainage now until they decide exactly where they're going to put all of their buildings and exactly what the footprints are going to be.
Is there a limit as to how many people can live on a certain property?
Yes, I'll ask him, but if you look, these would be single-family residences. And as far as the apartment, they're single-unit apartments.
They won't be multi-stories.
They would have to meet within the...
232 units, and the buildings will be limited to 30 feet. The building height is limited to 30 feet.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else have any more questions or wish to speak to this item? Yes, sir.
Yes, you got one. Okay. Yes, this is really the question. It's just more of a comment for y'all, especially city council. I've been burglarized in White Grove several times in the last 10 years. It's been my experience. You give me shotgun houses and apartments next to my property, it will kill my property value, and there will be an increase in crime. Call it profiling or whatever you want, but shotgun houses and apartments are not what Fairhope needs more of.
Anybody else wish to speak to this item? Yes, sir.
And Planning Commission Public Works Director Johnson, just to clarify a few things, I've been listening, and I know this is a hard part of the process because what's being considered here is two things: ultimate land use and annexation. If this goes forward and then they have the right to use the land as it's zoned, understand all of the processes that a lot of folks are concerned about now will ultimately be addressed. A couple of things. One, if it does come into the city, our tree protection ordinance comes into play, meaning that as every area is evaluated for development, they have to survey the trees, and those trees that are deemed to be of quality have to either be preserved or mitigated. Yes, there's no way for this development to go forward without a traffic impact study because there's two jurisdictions involved, ALDOT as well as the city. The city does have rights on Fairhope and Gayfer, and understand most of these intersections that were discussed will be limited access intersections. For example, the middle intersection at Walmart, it's a right in, right out only. You cannot make a left turn because they will not allow that on 181. And of course, the main entrance will probably be a signalized entrance, and that will be the protected control to go in and out. Again, the state will make those requirements, and we will make recommendations to this planning commission at the appropriate time to enact the warrants, the recommendations of the traffic impact study, and I can guarantee you the majority of those intersections on Fairhope and Gayfer would be limited access, i.e. right in, right out only, with the ones furthest to the west being with all full movements. And as you can see by the comments in the staff's recommendation, the first time that we were introduced to a concept of this property being development, the first words out of our mouth was, you got a drainage problem. And the engineers know that. The expectation is that not only do they have to design the drainage to mitigate the runoff produced by their site, but they also know that there's issues with White Grove. And the big issue there is that there is no positive fall. There is no place for that water to fall and flow out of there. And that's going to be a accommodation of their design, and that improvement will give relief to that insufficient drainage that's there at this time. So understand, even though we can't answer those questions tonight because we don't know what the future of this property is, but if this does go forward, the city council deems it to be in the interest of the city to annex it in and provide zoning, either what is requested or what is modified, then for them to develop the property, they have to go through the steps. And the one most important to me as Public Works Director is the master comprehensive draining plan, meaning that they're going to look at the whole site in total, including all the off-site issues, upstream and downstream, and come up with a design that as the development, if it does go forward, is following that comprehensive draining plan, not only to address the needs of the development, but the deficiencies that are upstream and downstream at this point in time. So I do want to give comfort. There's no way for this development to go forward without a comprehensive traffic impact study and following those warrants, which may decrease the points of ingress and egress to the three boundary roads. And there will be, if it goes forward, a comprehensive drainage plan that will be enforced as each site plan, MOP, or subdivision phase goes forward. So, that's part of our job, to make sure that whatever this body and the council deems as conditions of those approvals, these regulations and any regulations that change going forward in the future at that phase will be enforced in full. So I hope that adds a little clarity, meaning that but all of this is only in play in a comprehensive way if it's annexed in. If it stays in the county, then we only can apply what we can apply by regulatory authority. Thank you.
Very, very good point, Richard. Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to this item? I'll let one more person. Yes, sir.
Yes, Mike Moore. Yeah, I live just past Walmart. The traffic there is horrendous. I don't mean to keep beating a dead horse, but how are you going to move no less than probably 200 extra automobiles in the morning pulling out of there? I know it's single-family dwelling, right? It's 232 units. I've never seen a single-family dwelling that didn't have at least 2 to 3 automobiles there. So that's just putting it lightly. You're going to have no less than 460 cars coming and going at any time. People coming to visit grandma, grandpa, people going here, going there. It's just going to be constant traffic that's already backed up there. How are you going to lay the road out going towards Walmart? How are they going to pull out, go to 181 and make a left-hand turn to head north? There's no way to do it because people are going to be trying to go in both directions. Now, they can put the little lines out there trying to make you only go in that direction. Who pays attention to it? Nobody. You'd have to have a traffic light there. And that's just totally impossible. People going out the other end is gonna be the same thing. You're gonna have cars lined up, people sideways in the street trying to get out into traffic. It's just gonna be, I don't quite have the right words to put it. Well, it's a cluster, but I couldn't come up with the right adjective after that.
All right.
It's just that Fairhope used to be number one in the nation to retire. I mean, it was a nice place. I understand you got progress and everything, but packing people into that piece of land is not the answer. The traffic there is not the answer.
How many acres is this, Buford?
Approximately 76 acres.
76 acres.
Excuse me, can I ask about Aldi? I thought Aldi was going to be building there.
Let her come up if she wants to speak, please.
What is the density per acre on R1?
I'm sorry, sir?
Density per acre on R1?
The allowable density for R1 is 2.9 units per acre.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time and turn the meeting over to the commissioners. Commissioners?
Did you want Scott to answer any of the questions?
Oh, yeah, yes, I do. Scott, good point. My questions to you that I wrote down is, number one, I think we don't need to talk about a traffic study. I think that's going to definitely be required, not like it to be part of a motion if we do make a motion. But if you got a note here, number one, the number of residences, if you could go over that and how they're broken out. Number two, if you could just describe the buffer that you're proposing between White Grove and your proposed development. We've had a lot of questions about number of entrances, but I think that would probably be AlDOT required, and I think that a traffic study would definitely be warranted, this being such an important intersection of Fairhope. Number five, if you could discuss a little bit, I know we don't have a plan yet, but just where the water goes, which way it flows. And then finally, what you think is going to end up with the lot width in the Unit 3, especially backing up to into the White Grove area.
Okay. All right, I'll give that a shot. Let me back up.
Which way do you think the water flows?
Going the wrong way, people?
No, you're good. Keep going.
Okay, we'll talk about this. Seems to be the easiest one to talk about. Okay, the question, the first question that Josh had was, where's Lowry Drive? That's right here. There were several comments about that, and that does back up to these single-family residential units. They're currently proposed at 50 feet. If we go to the side setback of 7.5 instead of 5, we'll probably increase those lot widths. I can't tell you exactly what they'd be now, but more than 50. And the buffer that is required or proposed as part of the staff condition, 10-foot landscape buffer, and that's in accordance with the landscape plan or the zoning ordinance. It's a standalone ordinance.
Yes, so we have a standalone landscape ordinance, and the condition approval is just simply the timing at which that buffer is constructed.
Okay. And the number of residences, currently we're saying 77. It will be somewhere less than that when we change the setbacks and manipulate it a little bit. And then again, these can only be single family. The amount of, I couldn't tell you how many bedrooms each one of them had. They'll be normal homes. This is not, I don't want to get into talking about affordable housing and things like that, but just, they're going, this is Fairhope, they're going to be nice homes. And if they were each 3 bedrooms, you're looking at 225 bedrooms. So that was just one question that was out there. The residences on the apartment complex, it would be limited to 232 units, whatever that equates to in bedrooms, I can tell you, but per unit. And of course, there's no residential on the commercial that's right here. The entrances, obviously, we're going to do a traffic study. It just depends on who comes first will drive that. that production of that study. But right now, just at a guessing at what possibly would happen, these would be right in, right out, traffic light. Don't know about this. Those are the big ones that the traffic study will tell you. Very possibly right in, right out on one of those two. That was just a question about how we would certainly not proposing both left and right out of here. It just would not work.
Sure.
And it could be constructed, unlike Walmart, where a lot of people will just turn left right out of the right turn. You can construct it better than that down there. And go back to your questions, Lee. Stormwater currently flows this direction, here. This is an actual flood zone in here, so we will not be building on top of that or anything. We'll improve it to let it have more capacity for some detention purposes. That won't be the detention for the site. Each site will have to, each commercial site will have to reduce and only allow the pre-development flow out of it. But that's the main drainage area right there that we'll control when it leaves.
That goes into Cowpen Creek eventually?
It does, right by Aarons. And the lot width, the question about lot width, we were talking about this? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah. Again, they're currently 50. When we go to the setbacks, it'll probably be a little bit more than that.
I think the people on Lowry Drive were wondering how many people they were going to have backing up to their lots.
Well, let's just do quick math. If you had 19, I'm not sure if that's 19, just guessing, 19 along here, if you went from 50 to 55 in lot width, you would lose two lots here, so 17 lots along here. That's just, don't hold me to that, that's just a rough guess.
Okay.
Did I answer?
You did. Any
Yours?
further questions for the developers, commissioners?
Nope.
Thank you.
We're looking to the left. Any questions on that side? Some items I'd like to see as far as if we make a recommendation for approval to the city council. I'd like to see the commercial, and I know that they come back for site plan review, but just so there's no question when they do, I'd like to see the commercial have parking in the rear and be double-sided, kind of what we look for on Reno Road, so that the buildings are attractive and we don't have to try to worry about that. Definitely a traffic study. I'd like to see Lot 16 residential and then switch that commercial over to Fairhope Avenue. And then I think there needs to be some connectivity going to the west. We require connectivity and there's no stub. I think if we took that road that goes behind the commercial buildings and maybe punched it over to the west, those are things that I would like to see, on this project. And just for people in the audience, I live on Cowpen Creek, so I'll be impacted by this as much as anybody, and this is one of my two routes to drive to work. So, again, it's not that I'm, wouldn't make a recommendation because I'm excited about this. I'd much rather, go back like in the old days and see Mr. Clump there and ask him about his airplane and look at his airplane and get him to take me up flying. But, even if we just denied everything and they came in as R1 residential, they could get, over 200 houses in here just as R1. So, as Bob Dylan's saying, the times are a-changing, and unfortunately, when we get voted the #1 retirement city, this is what happens, so, for better and for worse.
But just to clarify, is this currently is proposed, it's about 309 houses?
That's correct. But as far as if you look at the comprehensive plan, you want density close to the Walmarts and the commercial areas and not 8 miles down the road. When these people need a gallon of milk, they won't have to go more than 1/10 of a mile rather than put it 8 3 or 4 miles out County Road 48, or 3 or 4 miles out Gayfer, and everybody, when they need a pack of cigarettes or a 6-pack of beer or a gallon of milk or a diaper, they got to jump in and drive 8 miles. At least here, hopefully they could walk across the street or, go to one of these restaurants that's close.
That's a death trap.
I hope we can. That's one of our goals here. Single Tax Corporation's built a lot of sidewalks. They built one down Fairhope Avenue that I don't see many people going on, and having residential connectivity from either side of Gayfer and either side of Fairhope Avenue to the other side of 181 is something that the road is 4-laned. I hope we'll work toward, whether an overpass or not. And it's something we've worked our tails off on Greeno Road to try to get. You actually see people walking along Greeno now, even though it's, 4 lanes and as dense as this is, commercial-wise, and that's the goal that we have. And I understand I'd be scared to death to ride my bike out there, but I hope that we can, when these plans come in, that we can get some pedestrian-friendly, what's the word? I'm missing the words now, but connectivity going from one side to the other. Any other comments,
I
Commissioner?
have a question for you, Buford. If we agree to annex this PUD in, does that mean that we have to agree to the plan of, I'm just not opposed to the mass amount of development with the apartments. I'd much rather see it all residential, where we've got 5, say that 2 children are in each home of 60 homes and 400, and that's 584 children affecting our school district just in this development with the 60 homes and the 232 apartments. Where if it's residential, you have a different demographics that would possibly take up some of these homes. Not to say that certain demographics only use apartments, but from the studies that we've been. And then the other thing I'm concerned about is we've already got apartments proposed behind Publix that are not even developed and finished. We just finished the Section Street apartments, and they're starting their phase 2. I'm just wondering if Fairhope needs more apartments.
So, Commissioners, to answer that question, it's very simple, is that PUDs have their own ordinance. And these are the requested uses requested by the development entity seeking to annex this property into the city of Fairhope. So this is, what you're seeing tonight is the requested uses, so therefore are the requested zoning districts of the property. And so we evaluate that against the criteria that we have to evaluate it against. In this case is the comprehensive plan, which does contemplate the higher density and the density transition, which is shown by the site. And to answer the Commissioner's question, it's above and beyond the scope of staff to determine the economic viability of certain developments. That is best suited.
For you.
I'm sorry?
I'd love to do that study for you.
That's correct. We simply review the application against the criteria within the zoning ordinance, the subdivision regulations, or in this case, the comprehensive plan, because a PUD is requested by the developer. Probably not the best answer for that, Commissioners, but that's the correct answer when dealing with a PUD. The advantage of a PUD is that the applicant can request the uses and specify the uses. The challenge for staff and the Planning Commission is to evaluate them because you can have multiple uses in the same area.
So when we have our comprehensive plan that's a tool for us to go by, and then we look at the growth of where we're going and what we've approved, then can't we reevaluate our comprehensive plan of that tool?
Yes, ma'am, and that is in progress right now. And when the BP Restore Act funds are delivered to the city, and then we will solicit and hopefully enter into a contract with a consulting firm to do just that and completely overhaul and create a brand-new comprehensive plan. that reflects the current development patterns and the current needs of the city. So that is definitely in progress, and we are waiting for bucket 1 or bucket 2 funds, forgive me for not knowing exactly, to be dispensed to the city.
Okay, but now, a couple of points, Holly, along those same lines. The only comprehensive plan that we've got to work on is the one that's currently in place. That comprehensive plan dictated that after all the work that had been done, that there were village nodes that were denoted for various areas within the city. One of those village nodes is at the intersection of Fairhope Avenue and Highway 181. The other one's at 104, and then you got the village center up on the north end at Publix and all of that kind of stuff. The way those were designed at the time they were done was that this is exactly what was contemplated there. All right, now, take that aside. We're going to have a new comprehensive plan coming, and yes, we can make modifications and do whatever we want to do, subject to the city council approving it. But at the same time now, what we've got is we've got an issue, and I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination they're going to hold us hostage, that if we don't allow them to come in under the premise that they want a PUD that looks like this, they're going to just keep it in the city, in the county. Let me tell you, be sure you understand what that means. There could be a salvage yard put there. There could be anything in its brother on that piece of property because it's an unzoned, out of the municipality of the city of Fairhope. They can do anything they want to. So we kind of always get caught between a rock and a hard place. Richard and I had this discussion not long ago. It's a real bad scenario to get caught in. The only way, and I tell you, people that live in District 15, for example, do you know when the last time we had a district in the county that was that had a vote on enacting zoning, or people like you come to the city and say you want to annex into the city because you live in the county? I don't remember one, but we've not had a zoning district vote in the county since not the current county commission, but 2 county commission races before. That's how many years it's been. Really? We've had zoning in Baldwin County, district zoning available since 1991. 1991. There was a flourish of zoning. District 16, which is Montrose, was the very first one that enacted zoning. District 26, which is down along the bay, Battles Wharf, Point Clear, all the way around to Big Mouth. That was one of the first ones. There are districts all over, scattered all over, that are currently, if you look at that map on the left that's on your board, those are your districts that have already been zoned. But look at the white areas. If you choose not, and this is what I did. I spent a long time on the Baldwin County Planning Commission, and people would come and they would raise Cain because they didn't want something in their neighborhood. Well, guess what? They didn't want it in their neighborhood, but they didn't want zoning either. Zoning is what gives you the opportunity to control what goes on in your neighborhood. And if you don't want it, well, that's fine. But you have really no reason to complain about it. Now, where are we? We're between a rock and a hard place, because they come to us and they say, we'll annex into the city as long as you let us have this. Well, if it's okay, then it's okay. But then you get a lot of people like this tonight come in here and they don't want it, don't want any more apartments, don't want any more anything. There's nothing that says if we say, city council, y'all turn this down, we don't want it, and they turn it down, they still build those apartment complexes. It's just that we don't have any control then. So there are a lot of things that are available to all of the citizens of Baldwin County, but especially those of you that live in and around Fairhope. Make use of what you've got. Now, in terms of this, I don't know the answer. Well, I do from my own perspective, but I don't for you or for anyone else. But I have my own feeling about it. So this is a zoning issue tonight. It's not a development issue, it's a zoning issue. It's to determine whether we want them to come into the city as a planned unit development, period. Had nothing to do with what the houses, we can't ask what the houses look like. We can't ask any of that kind of stuff. But what we can ask is, okay, we want a traffic study associated with this. And we were going to recommend to the city council either to accept it as a PUD or don't. Ultimately, it's their decision, city council's decision. And so whatever we decide, this is only a zoning issue. You will have you'll have several different opportunities to come back and look and talk about what it is that they want to do from a development standpoint. Two different issues, zoning and development. So you see a plan, but there's nothing in that plan that's written in concrete at this time. That's all I got. That was enough, wasn't it? That enough?
Great explanation, Art, thanks.
That was a good point, and it's kind of like what Richard Johnson said, and was mentioned, if we vote this down, there's nothing to say they won't come back with just an unzoned apartment, and then we don't have the tree ordinances and a lot of other tools that we have this way at least.
Or the opportunity to affect the drainage that a lot of you people have already espoused tonight is a major problem. We don't have that opportunity to deal with that. So you kind of can't, you either can or you can't. All right? So where are we?
All I'll say, this development has been in our office many months now, and I'll applaud the planning and the public works group for trying to address all the issues that we think are important to what would protect y'all. I know that may sound difficult to y'all, but if you look at what you have an option to allow versus what you won't have any control over at all, I think what we have carved out with the developer in a sense of trying to protect what we have in terms of the comprehensive plan, in terms of trying to minimize the impacts to everybody, I think you'll find that it's a pretty good opportunity to move forward with. And I live on the other side or on this side of Greeno Road, but I have a problem with drainage from commercial development that's behind my house. And I have traffic problems trying to get out on Greeno Road in the morning, and everybody has that. And all we can do is hope that over time we can address those issues and make it all better for everybody. That's all we can do.
Commissioners? The public hearing's closed. Public hearing's closed. Yes, ma'am.
Just to clarify, so within the site plan approval process, we would have the opportunity would there be an opportunity at that point to talk about buffers between the different zones of this drainage?
Yeah, unit number 3 will come just like a subdivision would.
Yes, sir. And you'll notice, Planning Commissioners, I reflected that in item number 3 right there. And Commissioners, if y'all indulge me for just a moment, Ordinance 1444, there's a couple different options for compliance with that buffer, that zoning use buffer. It can consist of impenetrable forested areas, and some developers have been able to utilize that. It can consist of an 8-foot tall fence with some specific requirements for that fence, in addition to at least 6-foot tall evergreen plantings, or it can be a double row of evergreen plantings of at least 6 feet tall. I think the predominant option utilized is the 8-foot tall fence, with the fence then buffered by 6-foot evergreen plantings. There's some language in the zoning ordinance about fences that have a barren or severe appearance, and I think that's what the landscape ordinance is reflecting by that. But if there's a virtually impenetrable visual barrier by a naturally occurring forest, that can remain as well. So there's multiple options for complying with that. What we're saying here on this condition of approval is that it already has to be done anyway if this development proceeds. Out of compassion for the nearby residents, especially on the northwest side, the condition of approval is asking that that buffer be put in place when any land disturbance occurs in Unit 3. So that way they will not have to wait for the conclusion of development activities to have that buffer in place. So I think that's a routine condition of approval, that we look at these types of things when we're reviewing a development to make the implementation better. And so thank you for allowing me to speak again, Chairman.
Anybody want to make a motion one way or the other?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion. Let me find which one we're on.
19, 13.
Item ZC 19.13. I make a motion that we approve the recommendation to City Council to annex the property and under a PUD ordinance as defined with the conditions recommended by the staff.
Second.
Okay. Further discussion? Richard, would you be willing in your motion to require the buildings to be double-sided buildings with the parking in the rear and the lot 16 switched?
To try to mimic the Greeno Road overlay, you mean?
Yes. I'd like to see that. and I'd like to.
But is now the time for that?
Commissioners, just to reiterate items number 4 and 5 in the conditions of approval, and I certainly respect that request and certainly understand that request. I think that for the stage we are right now, in preparation to send a PUD to the City Council, I think the site plan review will be sufficient because, remember, we will have to implement the comprehensive plan as a function of the site plan review. So those types of elements will be conducted during those site plan reviews.
And I do encourage
Do you agree with that?
I do encourage more commercial along Fairhope Avenue particularly, and less on Gayfer as Lee has mentioned. I think that's probably.
I mean, since that's Unit
pretty
3
good idea.
versus Unit 1, could we switch that in the motion?
Now, that, I'll defer to the developer, but certainly this commission can make that a condition of approval. That could be condition 6 of, condition 6 of approval, if it's the pleasure of this commission.
You're talking about moving.
But that, wait a minute, Buford. But that also can be made at the time of site plan approval.
Well, that's a zoning, right?
I don't think so.
No, sir, because my fear would be it would then force the PUD ordinance to have to go through a PUD ordinance amendment. So I think if it's the pleasure of the commission to make that recommendation, it would probably be appropriate to do it now.
Yes.
You're talking about moving the Lot 16 commercial over to Fairhope and moving some residential lots?
Yes.
Yes.
Making Lot 16 residential.
That's
and-
best done as a proposed
Now.
revision.
Yes.
Yes.
Or condition to.
And then,
at this time.
then we can reflect that in the site plan that's included in the package, go into the city council.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, because we will actually, as part of the ordinance for a planned unit development, a site plan will be attached, so it will reflect what units are residential versus what are commercial. So that would
And-
need to be done now.
Okay, but in terms of parking in the rear or parking, I mean, that's
Okay.
Yes, sir. I
that's,
think
that's coming later.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. I think
Fair
that's
enough.
best handled during the site plan
Right.
review process.
Fair enough.
Though
And-
certainly we recognize your comments.
Okay.
Um,
And Holly was asking about the green space. Have we made the change that apartments are required to have green space yet?
So, Chairman, Commissioners, the answer is yes. So
That's
that
made
will
it
be.
past City Council.
Yes, sir. That is evaluated when we go through either the subdivision or multiple occupancy project process. So both an MOP now requires green space just like a typical subdivision. And so all this sets is the unit number that contains the units. We know there's 232 units. The specifics and how it's laid out in detail and where that green space is, where it goes, and if it's the appropriate amount, that will be reviewed by the MOP process.
Is that satisfactory, Holly? Okay. I've got a motion to approve the PUD as drawn with the exception of item number 6, switching lots 1 through 4 and 35 through 38 with commercial lot number 16. Do you understand the?
Can I clarify this one more thing?
Yes, ma'am.
You know, when we approved the number of units, we've already made some changes to setbacks that effectively reduce the number of units. We're approving a maximum number of units. We're not in any way tying somebody to building out or giving them ammunition to say that they were guaranteed a number of units, are we?
That's a maximum number, right.
So,
Still got to hit the requirements, so they, like Scott said, they'll probably have to
yes,
cut a
sir.
few back.
So, Commissioners, if you'll look at, I worded condition of approval number two very carefully to contemplate that what we wish is the 7.5-foot wide side setbacks. And then with adjustments to the lot coverage reflected on drawing 2 of 2, and that should be prepared, submitted to staff prior to submission to City Council. So we don't know that exact number of lots today, but as Mr. Hutchinson indicated, it will certainly reduce. So that's why we worded that condition of approval to contemplate doing just that.
Just looking on a simple percentage, I would guess probably 7 or 8. Does that sound about right, Scott? All right, any more further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, we have 1 nay and the rest ayes. All right. We'll go on to the next item on the agenda. Let's have about, anybody mind if we have about a 5-minute break to clear the room?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, go right ahead.
If anybody needs a quick bathroom break, now would be the time.
Holy smokes. You need a nap. You want me to get you one of those night,
I need I want you to not have to.
You need an infusion of caffeine, is that what you need?
Yeah.
What's Big Boy doing?
He's doing fine. Yeah,
Is he busy?
He was doing all the driving this morning.
Well, you didn't get to sleep coming home?
Well, I drove last night. He drove this morning.
All right. So what about, what's he working on?
Oh, I know.
Is he still working with Milton Brown?
It shouldn't,
They're still working on that.
I thought I saw a smoke down there, but they ain't never had a smoke down there like we had a smoke that first time we burned that thing.
Yeah.
Woo, good God.
The permits that are up for Publix when
I know
we were
it's
doing all
always
that,
a struggle to
found
try
out
to burn it or do
the
anything
vacancy
else.
that was
Well,
2
what people don't understand, everybody asks me, said, well, you ought to be busy. I said, I ain't got anything to do. I've got anything to do for 2.5 years. I said, why not? I said, Mobile's the wettest city in the continental United States. It's 63 inches. In 2017, we had 110 inches. 2018, we had 103 inches. We're getting rains now that are 3 to 6 inches. Now, granted, it ain't like it was before. Dang, it didn't have to be.
And they haven't even started the second phase, they're starting it now. And then,
It's unbelievable.
not the, because they call me.
Okay, so what are all these people in here for?
Give me benefits, or give me a, you know.
Probably Fear
salary
Street.
bonus.
What do you think?
yeah, if they didn't have it.
People in there.
But if you look around, Daphne's building the ones at 64.
This one,
There's the ones in Daphne.
Sure.
Now, and those are affordable income. No, but we're building too fast and nobody's thinking. And it should be, I think we should have something to where it's like, you build as you sell, because they're going in and developing the land, but, you know, and that's what happened. I lived in Virginia, and they went in and they bulldozed this whole area, and there was like 2 houses. I didn't vote. No, I didn't say anything. Because I don't agree with it. But they have a whole lot of land. They clear the trees and everything, and then the economy tanked. So there's just like this huge overgrown field. And I'm like, I want that to happen. So everybody will leave. But, you know, but it's horrible. And then these poor people, you know, I look at where they're doing, what is that thing? They just built that, they're building a Tractor Supply, and they leveled all of that in Daphne, and the people that live behind them, you can now look and see up on that bluff and see their backyards, whereas before they had that natural buffer. But it's just like, progress is going to happen. At some point, we've got to
this was a rendition.
figure out.
You said early on, he said this is just this is a proposal. Okay, so there'll be modifications to it, and you will.
That's what it's
That is going to be.
I got to find another Fairhope.
Well, that's what he said.
I got to move to another Fairhope.
Flood is going to pretty much say, okay, you're going to be able to develop this residentially.
Is there another
So they can move that.
It would be nice if they just took it and they said.
That's why I work on weekends. So what we did is I made 2 pages of FAQs
Two.
and attached that to every single copy. Because I don't have time to do that. Okay, so 2 pages of FAQs.
That was smart, that was good.
Described it. Okay, these are the hand-drawn drawings.
Yeah, I like those.
Okay, we're going to replace this with professionally drawn drawings drawn by Christian Boyce.
I don't know.
They're gonna be, but
landscape
the crazy part is,
yeah,
it's
okay,
like,
I've
you,
met 'em.
so badly, I wanna
So-
say,
so it's
think
Northern
about
Edge.
it. When your development's
I'll
gonna develop,
explain
these people are
it. Explain why I did
and you
that.
didn't talk, you wanted to.
I can't
look
wait
at
for
it, and that's what you wanted to do, so don't be mad.
Yeah.
So,
And even over, and if you listen to the very first.
Interesting.
Oh,
Rear loaded gas engine.
yeah, I don't think we.
That's very
This shouldn't be an apartment.
I've never, like, that's a good one.
So cross-reference copies of plan.
I don't know.
The North Village
The problem is that they gonna.
This is from the visual preference survey,
Yeah.
that versus that.
That thing was, that was a smart. Right.
We can't
Lee's getting
say,
ready.
All right.
we're not gonna give you a buzz, but we want you to have it.
I concluded with that.
Because they don't need us.
I
They really don't need us to do the stuff.
I
Because they're in an
remember, and also
undrawn
I know
area.
the Katrina Commission, because the way they told Lewis, it was 96 acres, and he said that Gary wanted to send me an email. It was like, I need to talk to him. He got meetings, and he never heard from her, he just sent me an email.
Okay.
So he's like, Cheryl, what if she called?
But you know,
I'm like, I don't
the thing that you guys need to understand is,
She's got something
have
on her
that,
mind.
just have that say so.
She wants to talk.
This
Good,
is.
okay, well, thanks for the different. Hey, can other people have a work session or not? Is it just? What's that?
All these engineers are really receptive, to communication with the public.
Bradley Burns.
And if you call us,
Yeah, that's a lot. What's the rent for the parking?
Hey, Buford, we about ready? All right. If everybody's ready, Art, are you about ready down there? You about ready? All right. I guess we've had our recess. Everybody who is no longer interested in the meeting, if you don't mind, cruising out the back door.
Probably get cold in here.
We're going to go ahead and move on with the rest of the meeting. The next item on the agenda is SD 1909. It is a, a multi-occupancy project, an MOP. And Buford, I'll let you take it from here, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. You get to hear me one more time this evening before we finish here. And so we have a multiple occupancy project called Pier Street Marketplace. And as we customarily do, you'll notice both our zoning map as well as our aerial image showing location. This is the intersection of Pier Street and Mobile Street. And we'll give you the statistics on the property as you can see on the screen. This is currently Zone B3B Tourist Resort Commercial Service District. This is in the city limits. You'll see the PPE right there of the property. Mr. Larry Smith is the engineer of record, and Mr. Sandy Wise, on behalf of the developer, is with us here tonight. You see this is approved with conditions. And Commissioners, this drawing is the site plan of the site, a bit small on your screen. I'll call your attention about, I'm sorry, Commissioners, this is a 3-unit multiple occupancy project. Call your attention to some right-of-way on the right-of-way parking that's seen on the site plan drawing, and we can come back to this drawing if we need to. We'll address that on a future slide. We have a condition of approval addressing that matter. And then we have a landscape plan for the same site. What I'd call your attention here, Commissioners, if you notice the balloon in the upper right-hand corner, the applicant was granted some relief from the landscape ordinance, and it was that was put through the municipal court process, which is required for the landscape ordinance, and the ruling from the municipal court did not eliminate, but did reduce the landscape buffers, and they are as shown on the drawing. So the landscape buffer is reduced from 20 feet and they're still in place. Perimeter trees are in place as they are required, and you'll notice we have an area where it's quite a bit narrowed there on the northeast side of the property. What we have for you here, Commissioners, is that we show the use table, the dimensions table from the zoning ordinance versus the site analysis table from the site plan that we saw earlier. And what we're showing here is that the requested dimensions are in concurrence with the dimensions table. There is a text edit about the maximum building height in this table, and so we've pointed out and have clarified via condition approval that would be either 30 feet or 35 feet, depending upon the request of the developer. If they elect to go to 35 feet tall, it requires a site plan review.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I didn't understand the 30 versus 35. and
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sure.
So Commissioners, what you can't see is I had to crop the dimensions table you see on the slide right there. So it's pointed toward the 30-foot building height. There's a series of footnotes at the bottom of the page in the ordinance. I had to crop that out, and so I replaced it with that balloon right there. So 35 foot is allowable, but requires a site plan review process.
Would this have to get a site plan review due to the footprint?
Yes, sir.
Percentage anyway?
Yes, sir. So this would be a mixed use. So the zoning ordinance requires site plan review for a mixed use project electing to build to 35 feet. So we're considering the MOP tonight.
But regardless, this thing would have to come back pretty much
Yes, sir.
either way.
Yes,
So
sir.
you might as well
Yes,
say
sir.
35.
So it's possible that the actual building configuration may not trigger a site plan
Yeah.
review, but if they wish to utilize it fully, it would most likely will have a site plan review.
I think with this size lot, we can count on that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So a couple photos of the site. You see the left photo is looking back to the northeast to the subject property. This, of course, is the old Bay Market. And then a couple of photos along the property lines showing the adjacent structures on the adjacent property. You see the photo on the right is looking to the south, right on the property line, bordering with the adjacent property. And so, Commissioners, the staff recommendation is approval of case 19.09, the Pierce Street Marketplace. The applicant submitted a sidewalk waiver, and the requirements of the subdivision regulations require placement of a sidewalk alongside the property fronting along South Mobile Street. The staff recommendation is to not accept the request for waiver for a sidewalk. Certainly, final approval is to be issued by the Planning Commission. We have the note in A right there that should the sidewalk waiver not be approved by the Planning Commission, as a further condition of approval, the engineer of record shall provide a revised drawing and include them in the 4 permit plans that show the sidewalks in compliance with the section right there, the chapter and sections right there, to be reviewed by a Public Works Director and by me. You see my new title right there. In addition, Commissioners, referring back to Ordinance 1444, the Tree and Landscape Plan, and this is a housekeeping item, Commissioners, basically, that to agree with what is in item 1, that they furnish a revised landscape plan requiring the requirements, as well as reflecting the allowances in the municipal court case, and submit that with the 4 permit plans. So that way we can have it reviewed by the Development Services Manager and the City Horticulturalist. So item 1 and 2 are housekeeping items, Commissioners, are housekeeping items. And then item 3 is a housekeeping item where, as you've heard many times before on MOPs, this is where we require the as-built drawings by the landscape architect as well as the as-built drawings by the civil engineer, since this is not a traditional subdivision that has a final plat. So item 3 is that housekeeping item you see on virtually every MOP that we consider. And then item 4, referring to that part of the zoning ordinance, and this is going back to the 3 parallel parking spaces along South Mobile Street. The recommendation of staff is to locate those on site to relieve a potential traffic hazard. And as we mentioned earlier, relief was granted by the municipal court that narrows the landscape and tree ordinance buffer on the east side of the property, so there's some additional space for on-site parking that could accommodate those 3 spaces. Commissioners, I kind of went through that a little bit fast, but I'm happy to answer questions on behalf of staff. Of course, Mr. Smith is here on behalf of the developer.
Question.
Yes, sir.
All right, I understand about the 3 parking places out on the front. Go back to the sidewalks, and I know, Mr. Chairman, what your attitude about sidewalks is, obviously. But from Pierce Street going south, every house on Pierce Street going south is built, either their landscaping is all the way to the edge of the pavement, and there are no sidewalks anywhere down there. If you go north from Pierce Street, everything to the north, you basically have even got structures almost on the street. What's the recommendation to make these people put a sidewalk in there?
Commissioners.
Wait.
I'm sorry.
Let me finish.
I'm sorry.
Right across the street, we got a sidewalk that goes all the way to Weeks Bay, and everybody uses it. So, help me out. I'm just trying to understand.
You're going to be surprised that Mr. Sidewalk actually agrees with you for one time.
Get that, did y'all get that in writing? All right.
What time is it?
Okay, go ahead.
Commissioners, that's a great question. That's a great question. And the answer is, one, to provide the opportunity for full compliance with the zoning ordinance and the subdivision regulations. And two, we certainly respect the judgment of this planning commission related to this case. And I think certainly, and not speaking for the developer and the engineer, I think that is what they were contemplating by making that request. So I certainly think it's a valid question to be answered, and staff will certainly defer to the judgment of the planning commission on this. But when there's an opportunity to provide full compliance, certainly we're going to recommend it.
Can we learn a little bit more about the decision made giving relief from the landscape ordinance? I mean, I'm looking at the 40-inch live oak and the 50-inch live oak, trees that could live for hundreds of years, and 5 feet about less, maybe 3 feet, paving that's about 3 feet from a trunk. Maybe it's pervious. Again, like what we get isn't the full set, so I don't know if there were, there's lots of ways you can do that. Some of them include chopping up all the,
Well, why don't we let the developer
Yes, sir.
present, and then ask that question if he does, and then Larry, hopefully you're hearing the question on that. Larry, you want to come up and?
To answer that question, first, I guess, got to start off with how we ended up before the municipal judge. As y'all all are very well aware, it's a standalone ordinance, and when we first came in with this site plan review, kind of missed the whole section of the 20-foot buffer that's required along South Mobile Street. Just like there's one along Greeno Road, there's also one along certain roads within Fairhope, and that was one of them. Driving up and down it, I was kind of shocked that there was one because you don't see it enforced very often, but there is one, and so we had to comply with that. When we put in that buffer in the front along with the buffer in the rear and the building setback lines, we couldn't even get 4 parking spaces on site for a minimum of 400 square feet commercial building. And so we had several meetings with staff, discussed these issues, and they agreed that there were hardships in place. And I won't put words into Buford's mouth. He was in several of those meetings, and we also met with Wayne. But the only relief we could get was from the municipal judge. We couldn't get it from y'all, couldn't get it from anybody else. So that's how we ended up there. Yes, that is a pervious gravel. We do understand there's some very significant oak trees. We've got Joe Comer working with us on the landscaping, and we are going to put a gravel system over there and going to be very sensitive to the roots of that oak tree. But the purpose of the relief was really to be able to develop something on this piece of property, because it's basically 100% impervious right now. There's a little bit of gravel, but it's almost paved from end to end, or has a building. And then the other purpose was to be able to get us some type of access through there. I did want to point out, if I can flip, which way is going backwards?
Left.
On that bubble right there, the purpose of that relief back there was not so we could gain more parking. If you see, we have covered parking right there. We've only got 18 feet between that covered parking and the property line. If we were to also add parallel parking there, we'd basically lose any parking within the garage, because there would be no room to back out into that access way. And so as you drive up and down South Mobile, you know, y'all travel it as much as I do. Every time there's a pretty sunset, I try my hardest to get up and down that stretch. But there's parking. There's gravel parallel parking spaces. There are 90-degree parking spaces all up and down South Mobile Street. We're asking for 3 parallel parking spaces. Right now, it's a open curb from Pierce Street, except for one small area where there's an inlet all the way to the edge of the property. And so we're trying to work within the footprint that we have between building setbacks and buffers, and trying to create an environment that's pretty much like we have all through the area, also downtown. We're going to be heading north in this area, so I don't think it's going to be as big of a traffic issue. I would be more concerned about backing out onto South Mobile versus doing parallel parking in that area. I kind of went further than with just your question, but.
You can finish with your presentation.
Okay. I mean, we've got photos, but if y'all want to see all the other parking instances around South Mobile, I can let y'all look at those, but I'm sure y'all are very familiar with the stretch of road too.
How many parking places do you need?
Let me go back to it.
And what's going to be the use of the building? Commercial, residential?
No, the upper 2 floors are residences, and so we have to have for the mixed use, you have to have 1 parking space per those. And then the lower floor is going to be an office space.
How many you need for that?
For that, we've got a total of 6, so we need a total of 8 parking spaces.
Well, the 3 out on the street part of 8?
The way that the zoning ordinance is written is we don't get full credit for those parking spaces. And so we get half a credit basically for each parking space within the right of way.
What about these what about these on the south side? Compact.
That one's a little more complicated because the parking's halfway on our property, half in the right of way. So
3/4.
Yeah, so Buford gave us a little bit of the leeway on there, but it's basically the same. We got 1 extra space out of 1.5, 2 spaces out of that parking.
How many square feet?
God, Buford, that's pretty chintzy, you know?
Did Buford get his calculator out on that? Hopefully
he started doing areas, and when I brought that up, he started doing areas, and
don't get Buford on math.
Yeah.
Excuse me. How many square feet is the footprint on the building?
The footprint of the overall building, or the
ground floor?
The office space is 1,200 square feet.
On the ground floor?
Yeah, there's more because of the garage, but the actual office space on the ground floor is 1,200 square feet.
So there's not much to give up for parking spaces on the ground floor unless we just want to build which would be really attractive, a house like down at Mullet Point up on piers and everybody parks below it. That wouldn't be the most attractive by any stretch.
Yeah. But, I mean, you actually have the 8 spaces, it's just that they're not being counted as full spaces.
Yeah, I don't mind. I mean, even if he does anything different on parking, I'm for those 3 parking spaces out there. I mean, you know, the Board of Adjustments agreed to allow a restaurant up the road with people, you know, at night with alcohol backing off of a gravel road at a 90-degree angle. The city of Fairhope put in gravel parking spaces up on the hill where people park right by the Marietta Johnson statue, down by the curve at the American Legion. The city of Fairhope put in 90-degree parking with people coming out. You got Pierce Street right across from there. And then you got that narrow little bitty sidewalk that I would never walk south on because it gives me a heart attack. I'll go north on it. So, I mean, that's a slow driving 25-mile-an-hour speed zone area that, I mean, if people can back out after alcohol off of gravel, why can't they parallel during business hours and come in and out? I don't see a big issue on that personally. That's just me. You know, and I hate to see anything getting closer to those big oak trees back there that I see you've already got a, you know, keep out tree protection area on the plan already, so it's good that y'all have contemplated that, I think.
Just to ask a little bit more about that, I mean, the tree protection, it's like, it seems like the tree protection fencing would be going halfway across the road, or, you know, if it was going out 20 feet from the drip line, or what did that say?
Well,
No. Okay. I'm trying to, I guess, I like it hearing that it's gravel, so it doesn't have a pervious base, so you're not cutting through the roots, but there's still a curb. Is there a way to do the curb detail that doesn't cut through the roots?
we'll definitely look at that. Also, you got to consider what's currently under that root zone right now is the structure. We're going to be removing that, which will open up even more. I mean, the existing gas station is sitting.
That was my next question, is when you said the whole thing is that where, is there currently paving on top of it?
A good bit of it, yes. Not sitting right up against the oak tree itself, but what's not pavement back there is the little bit of gravel that I referred to.
Okay, so you might have to do root pruning anyway before you demo that. Okay.
Anything else for the developer? If not, I'll open the public hearing, and then we may call you back up if that's all right. I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing at this time. I've got two people listed to speak to this item. The first person's name is Rodney Gaines. Oh, it's wonderful. I don't know if the Auburn swimmer was coming up. I was going to get your autograph, so.
Yeah, we can get you one of those.
Right.
Anyway, I've lived on Pier Avenue. We keep talking about Pier Street. It doesn't exist anymore. We changed that. Times are changing. Looks like we're going to have a change down my way. I just have a couple of concerns. And the first one would be public safety. If we pointed out there's no sidewalks on Pier, lots of people come out to see the bayfront. As Mr. Dye says, where do the people play? You want to see the people play? Come down my way. They're over in the park. They're putting their boats in the water. You got boats coming up that street. You got boats coming down that street. You got people with baby carriages. They're walking their dogs. There's no sidewalks. Can I see the photograph, please, of the side of the building? Okay, if you'll notice here, first of all, there's a fire plug. We're going to put parking besides the fire plug, and we're going to put a handicap parking place there. Is that correct with the drawing that you all are seeing?
Yes.
Okay. So the handicap parking place is going to sit on top of the parking plug, and the handicapped people are going to back out onto this busy street. Is that what they're going to do? And the parking is partially on public right-of-way. Again, if you'll notice as you come here, there is no way for the public to safely get across the street. There's no stoplight. If you come on up to Fells, you'll see they've got a walkway to get across there. There's no marked walkway. I would invite you all to come down for the 4th of July and try to walk across that street. There'll be 1,000 people come down my street that day. I am concerned with people being killed and run over. The other thing that we've got going there, and again, you can see in part, I'd like to see where the driveway is going to be again, and where the oak tree in question is. Okay, so we're going to pull in off a pier. We're going to come back here. It's a parking garage on this gravel parkway here. Do we come back out the same way? Is there a way around that?
Yeah, it goes to the north and comes back out on
It comes to the north
Mobile.
and goes back out there, so I can actually drive around it in a circle then.
So on one.
Okay. And then there's a question with the height of the building. I've heard 45 feet, now I'm hearing 30 feet, then I hear 35 feet.
35 would be the requirement without a.
I've also been told there's going to be 4 units, there's going to be 3 units, there's going to be 2 units.
It says 3.
3?
Well, I mean, I'm reading on the site plan, it says proposed 3.
We'll ask Larry to come back.
3 is correct?
The request is 3
We'll
units.
ask Larry that. I don't want to say that.
3 is correct.
Yes, 3 is correct.
And what purpose will these buildings be? Is it going to be an office, store? In times past, I enjoyed having the store there. Heck, you could buy a bag of ice, you could buy some beer if you needed it. You could even buy bait. You're going to sell bait down there, what are you going to do?
I'll ask him to come back and discuss the
Yes,
use. ask about
I
the
am a staff
sidewalk.
member, sir. I'm not the developer.
Okay. Is the developer here?
He is, and I'm about to ask him that question,
Are we
sir.
going to sell?
Sir, hey, sir, we don't go back and forth. As soon as you finish with whatever questions, I'm going to call him back up with your questions and anybody else's, and he'll answer all of those.
Well, those are my main concerns.
Okay.
It's public safety.
I'm going to ask him
and,
about whether there'll be a sidewalk on the Pier Avenue side for crossing, the number of units, and the use of the building.
Like, as I say, the people walk in the street.
Yes, sir. Any other questions or concerns, comments about this application? The other was Larry Smith, the engineer, so we've heard from him already. All right, in that case, yes, sir.
But that's the sidewalk. Isn't that weird?
Mr. Chairman, when Mr. Johnson finishes, I forgot there are 3 additional items of conditions of approval, and if I can come back to the podium when he's finished.
And I will tell you, I have been the stick in the mud about no parallel parking on Mobile Street. Just a couple of things to remind you. Yes, it may be posted for 25 miles an hour, but understand it's an uninterrupted road, meaning from Fairhope Avenue until you get somewhere down the Grand Hotel, there's not a single intersection that stops the flow of that traffic. Yes, we have a speeding problem on that section. It's a very free-floating road. Yes, a lot of the individual homes that front have been allowed to put a parking pad, but understand their only capacity is 1 vehicle, meaning that you can pull right in and park. You have 3 parallel parking places. It'll be the only multi-parallel parking places on Mobile Street in this section of Fairhope. If 2 are occupied, that means somebody is advancing past it, stopping, reversing to park into the space on a free-flow condition road. Pier Avenue, I'm not happy with it, but it is a lesser volume, lesser classified road. Mobile Street is considered an urban collector. The volumes dictate that it is that. And yes, it may be posted for 25 miles an hour, but the actual 85 percentile speed is closer to about 37 to 40 miles an hour. So understand, if you introduce multi-parallel parking like we have in the Central Business District, when there is 1 space available, that car is stopping in the travel lane to make a move into that. That is not, in my professional opinion, a situation we want to introduce. Yes, I think the 90 degree has its own problems, but I wasn't here then to say, please don't do it. But in this case, just because something was done wrong doesn't mean we need to continue doing something that is not in the best interest. I would rather see this board give relief to how we count the number of parking places that are proposed, eliminating the parallel or whatever we have to do. I just don't think that is there. And you guys are killing me. Every time I've ever recommended, well, we'll give them a pass on the sidewalks, you beat the hell out of me, and now I say put the sidewalks in, and you tell me I'm dumb. So I don't know what to do now. So thank you.
Richard, wait. Well, if the 3 spaces, the 3 parallel parking places on the street, just go into 2, remedy your concern?
Or even
What if we
1.
just what if we went to 2?
To where you don't have somebody trying to back up into between the 2 cars?
Somebody could pull all the way off and back up.
Or even
If we
1.
had 2 long ones, somebody could pull all the way in and then back up and then just pull out.
Unless the first one's full and the other one's empty, then you're
Yeah,
still.
The first one was full, they could just pull straight in, and the second one, they would just pull straight in.
I think
So-
the
Yeah,
typical
you see
length is
people
like
park-
23 feet, so all of a sudden, if they went up to 34 feet, yeah, that would allow a movement that you could, but here's the reality. People don't pay attention to the lines. If there's room enough, they're gonna try to park there. So we do not have parallel parking in a commercial setting on that section of Mobile Street anywhere. Yes, we do have perpendicular at some public use areas, and that may have been a decision of necessity, but in this case, I would rather avoid introducing a central business district type parallel parking on this section road, because it is a free-flowing road, too free-flowing, and, I think it probably won't be long before we're talking about introducing some all-way stop conditions to try to break that up or whatever. But in this case, that's where my recommendation came from, and I don't want to hamper the development, if they're really not necessary. That's the question, based upon what the
You don't
use
have
will
a
be.
problem with the waiver of the parking, the number of parking units.
I would rather see relief giving to the number and eliminate parallel on Mobile than to, say, well, that's how we calculate it, so let's do it whether it's really a demand of the site use in the future.
Well, that's a good point, though. You don't want to start a precedent you can't carry on forever.
Exactly.
Nor to treat one person differently than everybody else. So-
And Commission, this is a tough one, because this is the proverbial round peg in the square hole, because you know, it is just a commercial area in the middle of a residential area, and, you know, they have a right to use their property, and we want them to enjoy that right. But, you know, again, some of the rules that are required because it's commercial, it creates some conflicts.
Well, you know, I own half of that building because of the amount of bait I bought there as a kid.
Well, I think if Mr. Wise personally.
I think I agree with my man back here about, are we gonna be selling bait?
Any other questions? And that's my position, but again, I'm gonna respect whatever y'all's decision is.
One being there.
I just don't like any parallel parking on Mobile Street. I'm gonna be consistent there. I would rather see relief given, and, you know, and frankly, if it turns out to be a bad decision, nothing says that we can't work with the developer in the future to put parallel parking there. It's not like if you say no parking and give relief, that we can't ever revisit this subject.
No, my only concern with when you talk about safety, and I understand what you're saying, and I sit here and I think about kind of a counterpoint about safety. If I'm going to the office and he's got 4 parking spaces on Pier Street and they're taken up, then I park across the street in the, in one of those parking spaces, and then I'm crossing a road coming in there, which to me is as dangerous because I'm not protected by an airbag and a door is pulling out. But
Everybody came from the pier, from the boat launch, back when it was a bait store and a beer store. Everybody came from that area to go to the little store.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and you know, again, and understand, and God bless the developer and his engineers, they have been with us on this for a very long time because of the processes had to get to this point. But, you know, the other considerations that if they did sidewalk their corner, then we could look at putting that crossing there and look at some measures to give some protection to that crossing so that there's that connectivity from the new development to the Eastern Shore Trail that runs through there, as well as to, you know, if somebody does, an overflow event happens and there's available space in the public parking across the street, that there's a safe way to cross. I mean, those are not things that we would not work with the developer to enhance that.
I just don't know what the sidewalk would, I understand the crossing, but it seems like it's the
It might be
sidewalk
nice
to
to have one
nowhere.
along the Pier Street side somewhere. They've got the parking there anyway.
Mhm.
Wouldn't be anything to put a little sidewalk there where people had a landing to then cross the street.
Right.
To find that.
It's up
Find that.
against the
Looks like they've
building.
got one on that side anyway.
Yeah, and that's, I don't think they'll have any problem using the one that's part of the building facade. But that, I just want you to know that I have been the stick in the mud. Larry has made a valid argument, and I'm going to respect whatever decision you made, but I do want you to at least understand what my thought process was in saying that I just don't think it's, and we can second guess it all, and it may not be problematic at all, but that is a concern. Thank you.
Before you sit down, is it an opportunity to put traffic calming devices on both sides of that to accommodate the concern of speed and to make it safe, perhaps for the people who cross Pier Street without?
It's always, yes, Mr. Peterson, it's always an opportunity. I do know that the Traffic Safety and Control Committee has entertained a lot of concerns with those that use that area that speeds, and I know that the speed trailer has been out there, and it's confirmed what we all suspected and knew. But as far as a complete plan of what to do, that is still in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak to this item? If not, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time.
And Chairman, Commissioners, if I may address the Commission once again, when we were speaking earlier, I forgot to, neglected to go over conditions of approval 5, 6, and 7. Item 7 clarifies the building height that we talked about earlier, and just memorializes via the condition of approval that typo is corrected. Item 6 is a housekeeping item related to furnishing utilities to the site, that any requirements by Fairhope Public Utilities are reflected in the 4 permit plans. And item 5 is a bit of a humorous condition of approval, but to demonstrate and make certain that we have compliance with the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance actually treats 5 bicycle parking spaces as credit for 1 full parking space. So the request of staff is that the parking space on the northern end actually be reflected on the 4 permit plans as 5 bicycle parking spaces.
Well,
And that gives credit, the zoning ordinance allows credit for a full parking space for that. And so commissioners, I think one of the commissioners has a question.
Yeah, sorry. Because I don't want to treat that like it's a fake rule, or like nobody's actually going to do it, so it's this throwaway thing, like just call it a bike space, nobody's really going to use it, wink, wink. Why don't we leave it and encourage bike parking in a landscaped area where you might use it outside of the garage, just a bike rack.
Yeah.
In addition to, and leave them instead of putting something that if somebody really is going to put a golf cart there, let's just acknowledge it and then have bicycle parking, which is inexpensive and easy to do in a landscaped area.
And commissioners, certainly respect that comment. This condition of approval is requested basically to bring that area in compliance with the zoning ordinance. Certainly, additional bicycle parking above and beyond certainly would be beneficial for the development if the developer wished to include it. So I certainly appreciate and respect that comment. What I'm doing here for number 5 is procedural to make certain that the drawing reflects requirement of the zoning ordinance. And commissioners, talking about the parallel parking spacing, the parallel parking spaces on Mobile Street, we need to discuss procedure here, because if the desire is to grant relief from those parking spaces, that is a zoning ordinance requirement, so that relief would have to be granted by the Board of Adjustment. So if there's a desire to contemplate that condition approval wouldn't have to be contingent upon approval by the Board of Adjustment. An alternative remedy that I'll verbalize to the commission and to the developer is that those 3 parking spots receive credit for 1.5 spots. If those parking spots were moved on site, only 2 spots would be required, not 3. Only 2 spots would be required to satisfy the parking loading requirements of the structure. So that is something that
So where do you suggest we put them? Do we cut the oak tree down? Or put them on gravel where they lose the other 3 parking spaces?
So if you notice
this thing's down, I mean, he's
Sure.
barely got a ground floor anyway. Or do we just say no ground floor and put it up? I'm saying give them the 3 parking spaces if you're not going to allow a waiver.
So, commissioners, again.
Or give them 2, and then give them a count for the bicycles and put 5 bicycle racks outside somewhere else. I mean, if we're trying to protect an oak tree and everything else, I don't see.
Well, commissioners, I think we've probably discussed parking ad nauseum. I'll just I will mirror Mr. Johnson's comments. We certainly, your staff respect the decision of the Planning Commission, and certainly this commission has the authority to modify these conditions of approval.
What's the option of modifying the building so you don't have to have that many parking spaces?
And that's a question the developer and his engineer would have to answer.
So many questions, I don't know where to start. I think I'll start first with the gentleman that, from the public hearing, because we kind of skipped over that section. The fire plug, the fire hydrant that he was referring to is called out to be relocated. I've had a couple conversations with Jay Whitman about that. We're actually going to have to fix some kind of quirkiness in the water system in that area, but we have accounted for that in our design. So it will be relocated slightly out of the way of the handicap parking, so it will not be in conflict with them. We do actually show a sidewalk on Pierce Street because of the same oak tree we've been talking about. We currently don't bring it out to the right-of-way, but we do have a little bit of green space. If it was y'all's desire for us to at least bring that up to Pierce Street, we could. It wouldn't be able to touch the property line, or we'd be going through the oak tree that's in question. But that would give y'all the ability to put an intersection there and take it across the street if that was the desire of the city. But we have a sidewalk and it curves around to the front to enter into the front steps of the building. I do want to point out that the parking that we have on Pier, other than the handicap, is compact. And so if we're trying to contemplate making that our only parking, we're going to lose parking because I can't have all the parking compact. I can only have between 30 and 40% of the parking compact spaces. And so we start contemplating getting rid of all of the parking on South Mobile, then all of a sudden those have to become normal parking space sizes and I lose one spot. We are definitely fine with adding bicycle parking. I actually liked Rebecca Bryant's comment on putting it in a useful place versus in a garage where half the public won't see it. We could put it into a landscaped area so the public could utilize that bicycle parking. And, you know, obviously I respect Mr. Johnson's position. We would gladly welcome any traffic calming devices. I know a lot of times I've heard actually represented before y'all how parallel parking and parking acts as a traffic calming device. That's what the whole report said on the whole downtown Fairhope. When they narrowed the lanes and added the parking, it was all for traffic calming, slowing the vehicles down. If y'all want to, if the city wants to entertain some caution lights, some other traffic calming devices, we'd welcome that because this will be his business. He doesn't want people flying through as he's pulling out at the end of work, at the end of the day. Were there any other comments or questions that I missed?
Why do they have to have this?
Well, I have a question. Is there any kind of way they could park across the street, like he said, and then just make a crosswalk? So that maybe maybe if we don't have the three in the front, the parallel parking, or maybe even the compact, because no one in Fairhope owns a compact car, I don't think, except for maybe like 2 people.
Yeah.
And, but like maybe alter the parking that way, so maybe, maybe put the handicap another parallel on the side on Pier Street, because Pier Street is a small street, and I'm just afraid with that being compact, there's going to be a F-150 in that compact. And people could actually maybe go across the street and use that parking lot, and then that would slow people down, because if you see people crossing every day, kind of like on Section Street, going from, what is it, the bookstore, Page and Palette, people actually, they've gotten into the routine of slowing down because that's now there, you know, it's there.
We contemplated that too when we made that request to the city to be able to maybe make some improvements in the parking across the, I think the response, and please, I can't remember if it was Buford or Richard who commented back, but I believe that land is actually, is it a lease? There's a lease on the land, and so they couldn't contemplate giving us continual access to it. You know, if there's a way to make it work, we were willing to do it, but that just wasn't an option either.
All right, I'm not professing to be an architect. You got a brick walkway around the Mobile Street and over around to the Pier Street side.
Yes.
Looks like a pretty good bit of space. Can you not incorporate that into your design of your first floor? Move this bathroom further south, pick up another parking place. You could actually have your upstairs over your parking place if you wanted to, and you still accomplish the same thing. Just something.
There's a front setback there.
Excuse me?
There's a front setback. That thing's setback to setback to setback.
What setback? The brick walkway?
On top of that brick walkway is up several feet because we're also avoiding a flood issue. And so that brick walkway is our access to that door, if you see over on the narrowest portion.
Always a way, big boy. There is always a way. Move the door.
So I guess,
anyway,
further, I didn't follow the whole thing.
Well, the point is you would pick up one more parking space.
If we did.
If you move the bathroom further south, pick that brick walkway up and incorporated it into your square footage, and then you got these other 4 on the Pier Street side, now you got 8 spaces.
You'd have a 4-foot step up into the door.
No, you wouldn't. There's a way to remedy that.
The bathroom that you're referring to, moving further south is also.
Yeah, anyway, just
it's-
think about it.
It's also an elevator to the residential, and a stairwell to the residential. Just where we started on this was, I think, 2,200 square feet, and we've shrunk it down to this much, just trying to battle this parking issue.
But you understand the real issue.
Yes.
You got a lot that is just about as difficult to build on as, except for a bait shop.
Actually, the bait shop wouldn't be allowed on here.
I know it wouldn't. I know it wouldn't. It didn't meet.
That's the problem
I
we're
mean,
up against.
this is how
Anyway.
many thousand square feet less than the last footprint already.
Nothing I can do about that.
Oh, I know. Well, there is, you can give them 3 parallel parking spaces, or you can choose not to, but, I mean, you know. I
Yep.
don't have an issue with the parking spaces.
Okay.
But I mean, we can agree to disagree. But at least I don't have a problem with 2 parking spaces out there, and give them credit. Ken, do we have the right if we want to waive the parking, or does that have to go to the Board of Adjustments?
Maybe.
I mean, if we make it with the caveat of why we did that, so we don't open Pandora's box.
That could be a driveway.
What's the question?
If we want to not allow the parking spaces out front, but allow this plan and just waive the number of parking spaces, if we make the caveat of the reason that we're doing it is protect the oak tree and because of the unusual configuration of a spot, et cetera, do we have that right, or does it have to go to the Board of
I
Adjustments?
think it would have to go to the Board of Adjustments. I don't think the parking requirements are necessarily flow from the subdivision regulations. I think they flow from the zoning ordinance.
That's correct.
Then why are we here?
I know, like, what if they open?
I mean, if we have to approve stuff that meets the building codes and we can't make waivers, then why are we wasting 30 minutes on a Monday night? Why don't we just let the staff do it and I'll be at the workout room right now?
Mr. Chairman, the answer to that question.
It's a multiple occupancy project, and it's, the review we're undertaking is required by the subdivision regulations, and as you've noted many times, Fairhope is unique in that regard.
Come on, let's do it. Let's do it.
We got one more question
Yes.
from people who aren't architects and engineers like that. But, if you open the building up where the parking would go straight through,
Mhm.
could you put parallel parking in the back then that would
We have
have
a
to back
picture.
out to get out of the way?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry? It's already going straight through the building.
No.
It looks like there's a solid wall in
Yeah, it
front
looks
of
like
the
there's a
cars.
wall facing Mobile Street, right?
Is there,
This
is there a rendering?
section, that section, this section right here is the actual garage door, where, in
Just
front
that
of
on the
the
far
golf
end.
cart. But the,
So they're just
But-
backed in, is what the cars are backed in on the picture.
well, they,
It looks like they have to back out. to
Yeah,
get
it looks like they have to back out to get out.
that, in essence, they will.
Yeah, it looks like 2 of them have to back out at
Yeah.
least, if
This
not
won't
3.
point on there, right?
All three of them.
Mounts.
You could
Yeah,
make it
drag-
through,
drag-
Alright,
that person
so-
could just park like that.
This one is blocked, but there will be roll-up doors here. But the landscape, if we do that, then we lose the amount of landscaping we have. We welcome the ability, but the whole point of us having to go before the municipal judge was to create more landscaping
Yeah.
along the frontage. But we had roll-up doors here, 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 and here. This one's the only one that is truly open to allow flow through in the current plan.
I think the landscape buffer helps it. I mean,
I
we're
told you
going
we
from
weren't
a
architects.
wide open situation where it's just like undifferentiated paving, and we have the opportunity to make it better. And, you know, I kind of agree that I'd rather see less parallel parking because it would make it better, but I hear you about the waiver, but if it were a big wall of garage doors, it's starting to head back in the direction of the bait shop, you know, where we just have paving.
So these cars back out and then they go around the north side of the road to get out.
Correct. Or he has to
But if
weave,
you
or he has
didn't
to
have the
hope there's not a
background.
car in the garage and weave out.
Parallel park against.
See, kind of seems to me like maybe, this, my thought, our job is to be able to tell them what we will, we won't accept, and let them figure it out. And we can't sit here and, I don't think we can sit here until the 12th of November and tell them that, make suggestions on how they change their plan up. I don't think that's our position.
Well, the parking has to be handled through the Board of Adjustments, right?
You're the one that started out.
Well, I know it, you ought to kick me for it.
A waiver or a variance from the parking standards would have to be the Board of Adjustments. Right now, as the plan we present meets the parking requirement. It's just a matter of if y'all want to allow the parking parallel. We could go down to 2 on Mobile Street and be able to meet it with the bike parking. But after that, we start losing not just Mobile, but we start losing the parking on Pier Street because we have to make those wider and deeper. And then we also,
What if we count the parking spaces, make the city of Fairhope responsible for building the parking spaces parallel whenever Richard Johnson wants to build the parking spaces, he can have city staff go build them.
As long as I get to
Which
not
would be never,
participate
which
in
would
this.
be never.
Unless certain city staff get to unnominate themselves from that task.
Just my last comment is that sounds like a good compromise to me to allow them to have 2 parallel parking spaces, so we have more landscape along the road and fewer parking spaces, and we do the bike parking also. I don't want to make a motion if nobody's going to vote for it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna dumb this thing down. This is my personal residence.
You
Kid
can't
comes
get
home
rid
from
of-
college, got her little deal up there. It's 2 residence units. Last time I stood in front of you, it was 568 units and it was 17-story tower and 192 boat slips. We've dumbed this little thing down to nothing. We've spent 2 years on this site. It's tough. I hadn't fired my architect yet, Mike. He's pretty good. Larry, we had to bring it up, but it's been a tough design to figure out what.
Sure it has.
The parallel spots, I live on Cliff Drive. You look right there, and there's about 8 or 10 spots. Coming around the sharpest curve in Fairhope, you either go down the pier, you go around the curve. They back out every day. It's not a problem. People need to learn to slow down. Speed limit says 25. Coming all the way down Magnolia Avenue, every spot on Magnolia is a parallel spot. And yeah, 2 are taken, you're still gonna stop dead in the middle of the road and Magnolia and back in, all the way down Fairhope Avenue. And you come through Fairhope Avenue, because I've just moved my office to 221 Fairhope Avenue. That's where Wise Living Real Estate is. You go right past there and it's all parallel all the way to the pier. You're gonna stop right in the middle. The speed limit sign says 25. I know it seems difficult to allow this parking one time, to let me have some parallel parking. You said it, the drunks at the VFW, they're backing out. There's another overlook right across the street from the VFW. Everybody's parallel in front of their house, and they're not just doing one spot, they're doing multiple spots, and they're doing up and down the neighborhoods. It's everywhere. They used to pull in there, buy bait, fill their boat up, and drag their whole 20-foot Suburban with their 20-foot boat across the street and put it in the boat ramp. They're already coming out of that boat ramp with boats. Everybody needs to slow down. They do need a traffic calming device. Something like a caution light would be great. Slow down, because I'm parallel parking while they're pulling out with the boat. If y'all need to knock it down to 2 spots, knock it down. But we need those spots out there, because I've already, pushed that building forward, put that alley back there for a really good reason, and I've already got it where I can drive through the building. Pull into a garage just like a sally port, and then you open the next door and go out. I mean, we've beat it senseless. I mean, and think about how many times we throw the plans away over and over and over. And just to start all over again, I'd love to show you the rendition of my little gas station, bait shop, house, whatever. But, I'd have to throw it away if you didn't like it. This is tough. I mean, but I promise you, with the character I live on Cliff, I'm trying to do something that's going to be nice.
I'm not making fun, but are you gonna sell bait?
I hope so. Probably wine and something else. Everybody, this is a bring your golf cart and park, get your bicycle. This is for everybody in that neighborhood to walk down and be able to buy something in that little 1,200 square foot. My real estate company, hopefully will outgrow it, but we'll see. Hopefully it's just a nice little shop where you can, that's why we called it the Pier Street Marketplace. Not as much as Battles Marketplace has down there, but it's the same thing.
But, well, I guess the public hearing's closed.
Two parks.
I've got a question to make sure I understood correctly. So those cars that are shown on either plan do pull straight out on the Mobile Street?
What if somebody's parallel parked? How do they get out?
Oh.
I did have two sets of all glass garage
How do you pull out if there's a parallel park?
Wait,
So I guess, yeah, that Clarice is asking my question. If those cars pull straight out, we're losing a lot of that landscape, which I'm not worried about the landscape in front of your building, but we don't need landscape there, but you're also crossing over a parallel parking. So I'm just,
It's my personal house, I'll back out and go somewhere else.
I thought you didn't back
And
out.
there's a green wall design, also, grow grass in the wall. We had
He's
other
gonna pull
drawings
through, he doesn't need the
that are
parallel
not-
parking spot.
He said if there's somebody in the
He could
parallel
park
parking
two
spot,
cars
back
in there.
Can you get around the building to the north?
He could park two cars.
Could we just allow double parking?
Yeah.
If they pull out forward, just allow double parking. Couple parking spaces in the back, just park behind them when they pull out
that's
forward.
a lot uglier.
Yeah, if you're already gonna be using the front to drive out, I'm sorry, but I just gotta understand this. If you're already gonna use these cars and you're telling me you're driving out onto Mobile Street, correct? Okay, so you have two options. So that means you could probably park two cars front to front inside those parking spots. So that person that's on Mobile Street side, they can actually pull out forward, and then the person that's on the back side can actually back up and go around the building. And then that way it kind of decreases this whole parallel parking. But I'm all for giving you the two.
I need the.
I don't have a problem with
Okay.
two. I mean, it's like, I
Okay.
mean, I think it's like
Yeah.
Sandy said, every 25 minutes, if we're gonna lose
Yeah.
these, why don't we just go up Magnolia? People, I've seen people speed on Magnolia, I've seen people speed on, Fairhope Avenue, I've seen people speed on every road, and if people breaking the 25-mile-an-hour speed limits means we don't need parking spaces. I mean, this is Fairhope, the parking spaces gold, and I just think we need them.
It was one parking spot for 400, my office was 400 square foot. You gotta have, is that not right, that you have to have? You have to have 4 parking spots for the first 400 square foot. So right when you do a snow cone shop, I mean, the littlest square you got that looks like that, there's the 4 spots. Then I got 2 residential units. You immediately gotta have 1 spot per unit. That's 2 spots. You're up to 6.
1, 2, 3,
And
4,
we
5,
went ahead and
6.
leased, we had to, you see if I'm parking cars under the building, that's quite expensive. I didn't get to even have much retail. I've shrunk this thing from 2,200 down to 1,200 square foot. Or it could be smaller now with stairways and elevator. I mean, I don't even think it's 1,200 square foot.
That's
So he
10
calculated it up.
spots.
That's where the 8 spots come from.
We're getting, now we've opened up all these options, and, I have to say, what we're looking at shows vegetation in front of the building and parallel parking on the street, and that has a certain aesthetic, and, if we're trying to agree to that and pavement all the way to the building, I don't want to leave that door open. We're going back to the bait shop. So I think, I want to be clear in whatever we move, that we're not saying the whole thing could be paved. We either are agreeing to the perpendicular and getting rid of the parallel, or we're agreeing to some amount of parallel with vegetation between it and the building. My personal.
I don't understand this. Apparently my drawing isn't correct.
I think 2 parking spaces is a good compromise. People can
Me
get
too.
in
Do
and
the
out
2.
very easily. We give them the credit for them. It's a great project, and it's not.
I just want to clarify something before we get too far down the rabbit hole. The landscaping, as we have it shown, is what was approved by the municipal judge. He approved the site plan specific. If we start talking about pulling through, the reason for the confusion is this parking garage has grown to be able to meet this ordinance. Originally, the parking was further to the north.
Okay.
And we were able to drive all the vehicles that were parked underneath out the front.
But
We
this
might
is
still
what
have
you're
roll-up
proposing.
doors, but we can't actually utilize that, or we'd be in violation of what the municipal judge approved.
I think he's done everything he can, protecting the oak tree in the back, trying to get the parking everywhere he can, and
So if we just do 2, then that would give them
No.
not the compact park, right?
that would meet. If we do 2 parking spaces out front, that would meet the requirements.
If they have 2 parking spaces out front, your credit is 1 space. So they currently have The 3 spaces shown offer 1.5 credits. That 1.5 credits is needed to total 8 spaces. So if we take away one of those spaces, we have a credit for 1 space. We still need to gain a half space somewhere.
So if we do 5 bicycle racks and 2 parallel parking spaces out front, then we can make that, then you would hit the 8.
So if you have an additional 5 bicycle spaces, you get a credit, 5 bicycle spaces is a credit for 1 full-size space.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Anybody want to make a motion one way or the other?
Let's keep.
Can we get back to the rest of the staff recommendations so we don't lose something?
Yeah.
We making a motion?
Yeah, we did kind of gloss over the rest of them, didn't we? And jump right on parking. Let me find my spot back in the staff recommendations. My apologies. Recommendations for approval. Number 1, we were requesting a waiver just for the reasons mentioned earlier. There's not sidewalks anywhere on this stretch, and
But when you're asking for the waiver, that's just on Mobile, not on Pierce Street. You're going to have a sidewalk on Pierce Street.
we have a sidewalk on Pierce Street,
And
yes.
if you could do that
We
with a landing where people could cross, I think that would be great. Make it.
cross over Mobile, put a landing
Yeah,
there.
yeah, just a landing where people could kind of stand there, maybe one of the little, things that handicapped people can kind of feel that, hey, I'm at the intersection.
Number 2 was just, I think, informational. We have to comply with the municipal judge, and that's kind of going back to what I just stated. Number 3 is just informational. Number 4 is what we've been talking about ad nauseum. Number 5 is 1 parking space shown on the proposed structure. We'd prefer to put that golf cart park, or that bike parking somewhere else, a little more bike friendly on the site versus in the parking garage, if that's acceptable to staff and the planning commission. Number 6 is routine, and number 7 is routine edit, so.
So, and Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, for item 5, staff is amenable to modifications by the commission.
So, good Lord, that's a lot to keep up with. So I move that we approve with staff's recommendations, with the following modification to staff recommendations, that we connect the sidewalk on Pier to Mobile Street, and that we modify their conditions 4 and 5 to have 2 parallel spaces allowed and bike. I'm hesitant to say 5 because I think it may be actually less than 5, but five bike racks to make up the missing 1 space.
I have a motion. Everybody understands the motion? Basically to approve the staff recommendations with the exception that there will be 2 parallel parking spaces, not the 3 requested, not the 0 that staff wants, but 2 parallel parking spaces and 5 bicycle spots to be put where the developer wishes to get the final credit. Is there any further discussion?
Just to clarify the 2 parallel spaces, there would be some landscape feature in the middle of those spaces so that nobody would assume there's a place to park in the middle and allow 2 cars to try to back in as if they're parallel parking. You know what I'm talking about?
I mean, I think we may even green create it, I'm not gonna guarantee it, but we may plant it with,
I mean,
You might get a boat parked in front of there.
Yeah, all day. A boat with the trailer all day.
and a little bit of, and I'm not suggesting landscape island that goes all the way out to Mobile Street. I'm suggesting something that buffers what would be the middle, it would eliminate the middle parallel parking spot so that the person that comes into the south parallel parking spot would be able to pull in and out, and the landscape be just enough guidance to keep them from keeping going straight. You know what I'm saying?
That'll keep Holly from parking her
And it keeps somebody from parking. a
Tahoe
boat.
and her trailer there all day while she's
A
out
line
in
with
the
the
boat.
number 1 and 2 on it.
Anyway, that's.
Okay, all right, I've got a motion, a second. Any more further?
I'll second it
Yes.
based on my.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously.
Goodness gracious.
All right, Next item on the agenda, SD 1929, if I'm correct. This is a public hearing to request of Two Hands Design and Development for a preliminary plat approval of Hilltop subdivision, a 29-lot subdivision at Twin Beach and Battles.
Jesus.
Okay, thank you.
All right, short timer.
Yes, thank goodness. In fact, I noticed in your application, I didn't put the site, so I really am getting short time syndrome. Okay. Let's see, the investor in this project is Mr. Jason Tickle and Enrica. They're still back there, hung in there through the whole thing. The engineer of record is Mr. Trey Genright of Jade Consulting. Project acreage of this site is approximately 19.39 acres. The largest lot on the site is 35,716, and the smallest is 15,000 square feet. And we went through, there's one, and it's not an issue, but I know that Richard Peterson was working with the applicant regarding some water and sewer issues there. And so we left that as a condition of approval. And the other item was regarding trees. They provided a tree survey, but Buford was going to check on the applicability of the landscape ordinance, and that's something that they can work on between now and the pre-construction, but we need to really define that prior to pre-construction, but I won't be here. So I just wanted to flag that for everyone on record. And that's it.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Nancy? Well, we can still ask her questions. In that case, I will go ahead and, Trey, do you want to, you were over there a minute ago, I better put my glasses back on.
Stand up, get my legs moving again, I fell asleep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Trey Genright, J Consulting. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. This is a 29-lot, single-family development. It's in unzoned Baldwin County. Has the minimum 15,000 square foot requirement with a minimum lot width of 100 feet. This project complies with all of those items. It complies with your green space requirement. It actually exceeds that considerably. It also includes the sidewalk down South Section Street that's been requested. And we are in full agreement with working with Mr. Peterson to get this sewer issue resolved before we start construction.
So you have excess lot size and excess green space? You sure you didn't do something wrong? We haven't seen this in about 7 meetings.
Yeah. The Tickle family is trying to do something really nice here, and so this is a beautiful piece of property, and we want to preserve the better pieces of it for the common.
It is a pretty piece of property after that, it really is.
Can I add one thing that I didn't talk about? The property, and I believe it's to the south of it, is the TR district. And they did have a meeting with the local folks regarding, how prior to preliminary plat, they need to have a meeting with the neighbors and all that kind of stuff. There was some drainage discussion with the TR district property, and I think they're working together to kind of come to resolution on those.
Any questions for the developer? In that case, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. Does anybody wish to speak to this item from the public? If not, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn this over to the commissioners.
Motion, Mr. Chairman.
I've got a motion to.
I had a question.
You do?
Yeah, sorry.
Really?
You talk more than I do. I just had a question with the LID and the adjacent to the stream. I don't have an issue with this development. I think I like what they're doing. I want to understand how that works when we have LID and next to a stream. Do we have a requirement that there is a? It really was a question for you, and it just moved faster than I could get it out there. Does it have a lip that's higher than the flood BFE? How do we manage that?
So this project's probably no different than any of the other ones I'm doing. I try to squeeze as much LID as I can.
Yeah.
This project on the stream area down there is actually discharging through a level spreader.
Okay.
And it's just, the level spreader is situated at the 50-foot buffer off the stream. And so that's what we're doing.
But then the height, and I'm not trying to pick on you, I'm thinking this is gonna come up more and more, and I actually like integrating it with natural waterways. But so if the stream is swollen because it's flooding, how does the LID,
So
is the height set so that it would still
We did
continue
a
to
full
perform?
HECRAS model on this stream to determine what the high water elevation is. That's part of the Baldwin County subdivision regulations to earmark where the 100-year flood elevation would be, label that on the plat. That also takes into account the buffers. Sometimes they coincide. This one they did, sometimes they don't, but.
Okay,
yes.
so it's set above the 100-year.
So all that is to work in conjunction with each other. So it's a pretty complex thing. I hope I answered it fairly straightforward and simple, so.
You did, thank you.
All right. I've got a motion to approve. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to cover a couple of things, and Ken can speak up at this point. On connectivity, we looked at connecting to the north, and it really didn't work in terms of, it wasn't far enough distance in to connect to the north, so that's why you've got the circular pattern. Also, the lot 29, we talked about I had both Richard Johnson, who's not here, and Eric Cortinez look at that. You see there's one lot separate. It doesn't really exactly meet our lot standards, but we've checked it with both Richard Peterson and Eric Cortinez, and neither one of them had any issues from a design standpoint, from a flood, building standpoint, that kind of thing.
I still have a motion to approve.
Well, I didn't approve it, but I did.
I still have a motion to approve.
He just got motion.
Case SD 19.29 Hilltop subdivision, I move we approve it. Subject staff recommendation.
I have a motion, I have a second, further discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously.
God, that's the first
This
one.
is the nicest proposal I've seen in a while. It's very nice. Next item on the agenda is final plat approval for Firethorn Development Phase 6.
Yes, this project is located on the property on the east side of 181, just south of Quail Creek subdivision. The associated investor is actually several people, Mr. Nathan Cox, Ralph Reynolds, Davis Pilot, Billy Stinson, Sam Stinson, Tom Gross, and the engineer of record is Mr. Justin Britt of Dewberry, but I believe Steve Pumphrey is representing them. The total acreage of the Phase 6 Firethorn is approximately 12.6 acres. Oh, thank you, Buford. With the largest lot being 31,950 square feet, and the smallest being approximately 15,000 square feet. And we've done a final inspection on this site. There is, we're in discussion regarding some sod, which is a pretty minor thing. We put as a condition of approval, there's to be a 6-inch water line tapped and stubbed out on the north end of the project. I think we've
I talked to Bobby Reyes today, and we're gonna incorporate that into the next phase development.
Okay, so we're going to remove that as a condition of approval for them? Okay.
Well, we're working it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want me to leave it as a condition?
You can.
Okay, all right, we'll leave it as a condition of approval. And the final punch list being satisfied, again, the issue out there is there's a little bit of sod and a little bit of erosion, and we're asking, dead sod, and we're asking them to take a look at that. And I think that's it.
All right, thank you, Nancy. I see Mr. Dewberry.
Here come Mr. Dewberry.
I got to get Mr. Dewberry to come to these meetings.
You'd have missed all the fun.
The only issue I have with the comment was if we're going to make it a condition of approval, I want to make sure we're not having to put it in before I get my plat signed.
I agree.
Okay, but I didn't hear that. That's what I want to make sure that we're not saying that.
That's what we agreed to this afternoon.
Right, it'll be done with Phase 5.
So just modify the prior to signing plat.
Okay, as long as we all understand that.
You run a tough ship, Betty boy.
Well,
They
I've been
don't
sitting
pay you the
listening
big
to this
bucks
all
for
night.
nothing,
I'm
do
trying to
they?
make this easy.
Let me just say,
Only because they're
usually,
gonna
we
start
don't,
phase
if
5
it's a,
like next week.
That's right.
they don't sign the plat unless all conditions are satisfied. So that's going to be a little bit of a dilemma.
Okay. We'll have an
Okay.
agreement that they won't get out of.
All right, so there you go.
Okay.
I won't be here.
Let me go ahead and open the public hearing. We do have somebody listed to speak here. Greg Bostic. Yes, sir. And if you'll state your address, Mr. Bostic.
Thank you. Well, my backyard backs up to Firethorn, and there's supposed to be a green zone. All right. What happens when they sell that lot to an individual owner? Are they going to be able to go in there and cut down trees on that green zone? That's one of my questions.
Nancy, is that the green zone, is that on the person's private property, or is that a common area?
There's no common area in here. That's why I was trying to figure out. I mean, yeah,
There's a buffer along.
oh, you're talking about the tree preservation buffer
Talking about a
right
buffer.
here?
Buffer zone.
Okay, yeah, there is a tree preservation buffer there.
Okay, that
And it's
means
the same-
nobody can cut any trees or down or anything, right?
That means they have as much protection as we can provide.
What happens on a Saturday morning when Mr. Happy Homemaker wakes up with his chainsaw?
Yeah.
And wants, and I can see his point, he bought the lot.
This is a very awkward issue because there's no way, it is on a lot, so people can cut trees in the lot. We just provided it as much as, to let people know that these trees are heritage trees.
But by law, they can still go in there
I
and
think we'd have all, I'm not sure how that's going to work. That would be a whole thing.
Can you answer, is
We've
that in
gone
the
back and forth
Owners
between this,
Association?
Between common area, putting it as common area versus.
As I understand it, it's a tree preservation area, it's in the restricted zone, so they can't take trees down in that area.
Okay, so they did put it.
Now, how you enforce that, again, it's there, and,
It would be enforced by the
covenant.
Owners Association of that.
Ken, is that,
it's easier to get permission on forgiveness and it is permission.
I want to put you on the
Another
spot,
question.
but-
They've got a privacy fence on Quail Creek Drive. Are they gonna run that privacy fence behind my property back there? Please?
No.
not the development. Now, whether the home builders put them up, I don't know. The developer's not putting them.
Yeah, that's not a requirement in our subdivision regs. When you have residential, abutting to residential, there's no requirement for a fence.
That's the only privacy I've got back there, is that 100-foot little woods there, and now it's gonna be cut to 20, and then if Mr. Homemaker wants to cut it down, I'm gonna have it done. Are they gonna be
Why can't
two-story
he put
houses?
fence
with
up?
it?
Yeah, well, this is already done. This is the point of the final plat. They've already built it. And so
I know.
this is the point of which, it's like, is the subdivision, built properly? It's not, do we like how it's done or not? We're like, is the water there properly? Is the sewer there properly? Is it stuff
Why did
that?
you send me a registered letter?
That's what the law requires, and Emily doesn't want to get locked up.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anybody else wish to speak to this item? In that case, I'll close the public hearing and turn this item over to the commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, Art wants me to make a motion in regards to SD 1930. I make a motion we accept it as recommended by staff.
I have a motion to accept the staff recommendation. Do I have a second?
Second.
Can we amend that to remove the prior to signing the plat on condition number 1?
I think we should.
Yeah, I mean, well,
Otherwise, I can't sign the plat.
Well,
maybe I didn't read the condition exactly like I should have.
Well, let's
but-
let somebody
but-
else make the motion and make the motion that, no, just because I want you included in the motion, why don't we let somebody else make the motion and make the motion subject to, number one, Richard Peterson being acceptable, or we could, rather than his name, use his position being,
Well,
finding
okay.
that item acceptable.
Let me just explain that when you have a final plat, if, he can work with the developer or whatever, but once they sign that plat, if they choose not to put something in or not to do something, there's nothing that we can do about it. It's a final plat. No, it's a final plat.
We can restrict COs for houses, we cannot issue permits. There are
Well, I'd
several
hate for
steps
them
that
to
can
be
be taken.
looking to get the final plat for the next phase signed.
I know, but I'm just saying that that's the reason it's a final plat. Once that signature goes in this phase is done.
Okay, well, then Richard needs, we're
I'll
looking for
rescind
somebody
my
else to make a
motion. I'll
motion.
rescind my
You have to
Rescind?
rescind your
I
motion.
did.
Rescinded his motion.
Do I have to
Okay.
make a motion to rescind my motion?
Yeah, no, you're all right, you're good. All right, I'd make a motion, case SD 19.30, Phase 6 of Golden Oak at Firethorn. I recommend approval, subject staff recommendations with the exception of item number 1. To be worked out by Mr. Peterson and the developer.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion to approve the staff recommendation with the exception that number 1 will be allowed to Richard Peterson's discretion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda, request of Mullins LLC for an informal review to rezone property from RA to R2 medium-density, single-family residential district. The property is located on the southwest corner of the intersection of Highway 181 and Bay Meadows Road.
Good evening. So this is an informal review, 1904, for Live Oak Estates. Mr. Joe Rector is here on behalf of the applicant. This is similar to the case we heard last month for the rezoning of the RA property on Bay Meadows and 181 to a planned unit development. The applicant has wished to have an informal review, again, to speak with the commissioners this evening on the development to get some more feedback to allow them to further enhance their proposed drawings for a future meeting. And I will turn the meeting over to Mr. Joe Rector, who was here this evening, to explain the concept what they have moving forward and to answer any questions that the commissioners may possibly have.
I missed this. It's Karen. Yeah. We don't have any paperwork? Well, the one I didn't find it.
I brought some for you.
Really nice. There's a lot of ink.
So as you may remember, we came before you before and had a PUD submittal, and we had requested that this, I had 7 copies of it.
We'll have to share.
Yes, sir, boss.
So what you have here now is, what we submitted to you before was for a PUD approval on this particular site. And we requested that that be tabled because there was several concerns that were brought up at that time about various things like connectivity, mainly to Bay Meadows, and then the compatibility with the surrounding properties to that that were already developed in that area. And what you have before you here is we've gone back, taken some of those items into consideration. And one of the things you'll probably notice on this is that we've eliminated the 2 access points out to Bay Meadows and forced all the traffic out to 181 so that you have less of a tendency, you can't guarantee it, but you have a less of a tendency of the people that are going to come out of that development and going to want to turn to the right to head out toward 181, and they're concerned about people cutting through there and cutting back to the west down down Bay Meadows, feel like it's reduced to that. Also, what that does is it allowed us to pull that back from Bay Meadows a little bit more on that side to preserve more of the large oak trees that were in that area there. In speaking with the developer and the homeowner, or the landowners there, they all went back and watched the tapes and the video of that previous meeting and heard all the concerns and some of the comments and everything that was brought by the various neighbors. And what they had asked me to do was to come back and bring a modified version of the PUD drawing that was similar to how it was before, with a few of those revisions done to it, to get feedback from that. We also had the conversation about, all right, what if it was not a PUD and it was submitted as just a straight up request for rezoning on the portion that is the commercial, is the residential, to just be the, sorry, I thought you were, if it was just the, just rezone to your R2 zoning, and what you would end up with, what you would end up looking like on the site that's like that. I have the same number of those as well.
Well, wait, which one have I got right here?
That's the PUD, that's the one.
Okay, that's the PUD.
That was the PUD with the modification of the connections out to Bay Meadows, so that everything forced to the front and getting that away from where everybody was concerned about the traffic on Bay Meadows there. Here's one.
Don't dirty that one either. God, I hate it when that happens.
So what you see with this is just what the site would look like if it was zoned R2. The commercial was separate. It was a parcel that was separated out of it, and you had that as its own separate commercial zoning, and just the commercial, or just the residential done as R2. And what you can see is that, it creates a different size lot. Yes, they're larger lots. It reduced the total number of lots on the property down to 79 lots. We were at 107 lots with the PUD drawing that you see. That's the first drawing that we handed you. But the thing that I'd like to note is that whenever you start looking at them side by side, even though you have larger lots and fewer numbers of lots, you actually lose your green space and your parks, because those are part of the PUD requirement. And where you had a percentage of green space on the rezoning parcel of only 15%, we were providing 25% on the PUD, so you got an additional 10% of green space on the property, Central Park in there, and we're also protecting the trees up at the front and having just the one access point out onto Bay Meadows. So everybody understood the concept that initially it was like, hey, there's a concern that, we know Twin Beach to the south of us is pretty much a carbon copy of what we were proposing, but that there was a discussion about this transitioning of larger lots as you got further out away from this. And we just wanted to be able to clearly show the pros and cons of that, because although it sounds great, but when you look at it, you really see that the PUD gave you a better development there that has more open space, more green space, more recreation area, more protection of the trees and everything there. So that's one of the big things we really want you guys to kind of just look at, and then provide us some feedback as to which one of those still that you feel is the direction that you would be the most comfortable supporting, because we need to try to land on one of these, and we just want to make sure that we got you everything before you that you can really.
This is the PUD you brought in last time, though.
It was the PUD with the modifications I just described about. We had 2 access points out to the front. Everything was back. We had lots backed up all the way along Bay Meadows. We took those out, put the single access point out to Bay Meadows.
There are fewer lots on this one too, aren't there?
Pardon?
There are fewer lots on this PUD as well, aren't there?
There was 107. Yeah.
No, it's 107 lots.
Right.
Look over there on your lot data table on the left.
Okay, I see. I was counting. Okay.
I don't know, but I like think this, if they'd put a green space in there.
I wonder what the countable area is within those lots, like what you have setbacks,
And I've got another drawing here that was in our full report initially, and I know it was a small picture. And it also, just if you care to see this too, just so you kind of see, you know, I know you guys see these projects all the time, but this map I've got gives you a 1 mile radius of our site, and it shows you the surrounding developments and how we blend in with those. And it gives you a different perspective than the regular zoning map that goes up that shows a green box and an orange box. But I'd like to share those with you too, just to see that we do follow the general flow here. I mean, we had a string of these on 181 tonight that were rezoned from R2 to commercial, and then a PUD up above us that had 50-foot lots. We have, you know, on 181, you have a PUD tonight that was approved with 50-foot lots to the north of us. A few months ago, there was a PUD approved directly south of us that allowed 52-foot lots. So we're in the middle. And what we were asking for was 52-foot wide lots too. And it was, you know, suggested that it was going to be denied because it didn't fit the development patterns. But I think that, you know, if you look at this and see what's going on around it, and then contemplate that 181 corridor as we're talking about here, that we do match what's going on around it. And as we said before, I have a copy of the PUD that was approved for Twin Beach, and if you lay it down and look at it next to ours, I mean, it looks almost exactly like it, with the exception of the common areas that are shown on theirs. Actually, is a stormwater pond in the middle and a stormwater pond out front, whereas this is actually a park, a city park that's got streets on both sides of it, and it's preserved, and there's not a pond in it. There's not any use except for active recreational for the neighborhoods. So that's why we went back to that and have brought this back with, you know, to ask for input on this, but to have you consider the option of continuing back down the path of trying to develop a PUD we could all live with, rather than just going to a straight up, let's just rezone it R2 and roll on. So if you're interested in any of these other drawings, I'd love to share those too.
I'm looking at your lot data table, and the green space required on your PUD is 5.26 acres, is that right?
It was 20%.
Yeah, 20%, and the green space to be provided would be 25 point, that's 6 point, is that 6 acre, how many acres is this little park in the middle?
The park in the middle?
Yeah.
And I don't have the breakdown of each one of those separately. I've got the cumulative of the park in the middle and the area that is around the stormwater pond to the southwest corner of it, and the area of preservation along
Bay Meadow?
Bay Meadows.
All right, so each one of those lots is 75 feet, so that's going to be, say 100 by, okay, 100 by 300.
It exceeds the minimum requirement size that's in your land
Right.
development code for,
Okay,
land
I got
development
it.
code for those
I'm with you.
type of parks.
All right.
So the purpose of this tonight was to get some feedback if we were to bring this back with modifications, and if there was any of the other modifications to the PUD that would keep that alive versus just having to bring it back as a straight up just rezoning to R2.
Well, there are a lot of differences. I mean, one of the ones we looked at today was across the street from Walmart. Y'all aren't. Bay Meadows is not the road that Twin Beach Road is, by any construction standard whatsoever.
That's why we took away the two entrances.
Right. And you're making an assumption that we'd approve R2, and if we approved R2, your commercial wouldn't be out there because it would either be cut out and still be RA and would have to be rezoned to some kind of B4 or B2
Right.
or something like that, so that's another assumption, so.
No, that's actually not an assumption. That was, we would not include the commercial piece with the residential. It would be a separate.
So, I mean, there are a lot of different things, so, but there is a good bit I like better about this drawing than the last one, especially that buffering toward the Bay Meadows, but Commissioners, anybody else have anything else to add?
I like the green space in the middle of the PUD. Personally, and the reduction in the number of access points to Bay Meadows. But certainly that gives additional open space from what it was. And then I really am not enthralled with the, and certainly you could take a couple lots out of your B2 and make the same open space right in the middle.
R2.
I mean R2, excuse me. So anyway, my thought.
Anybody else have anything to add? All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much. All right, next item on the agenda, IR 1905, request of Kerrigan Properties for an informal review to rezone multiple properties from R6 Mobile Home Park to
I believe
R2
they
Medium.
pulled that from the agenda. That's going to be for next month.
All right.
I don't know.
What did it say?
Off the agenda.
Is it going to be an informal next month? or-
Kerrigan's off?
Is it going to be informal next month? Yes. Okay. Is there any older?
Well, then you're gonna have to come back and do it now.
Yes, we do
That's
have
all there
one-
is to it.
We
You've,
do have one item of old and new business.
So, Mr. Chairman, an item for old and new business, and I apologize, I do not have the note on my agenda. I'm going to ask Emily if she would to read the case number. We need to ask for a continuation. Tell you what, Mr. Smith. Larry, okay. And so, commissioners, what we're verbalizing, a verbalized request to the commission is for an extension on a case, and we learned about this very late in the day before the meeting, so we didn't have the opportunity to reflect it in the agenda. And so, Mr. Larry Smith is actually looking that up. We'll give you the case number and verbalize a request.
Which subdivision? Garner subdivision?
And so he'll look at the case number in just a moment. And Mr. Smith, what is the requested extension?
We can just do it based on the name. We probably don't.
Remember that?
Okay, we don't need the case
Yeah,
number, do we?
if y'all recall, I was here in January, I believe it's January, requesting an extension on the Garner subdivision, which
It's
is.
over on Fells.
Yes, it's their residence, and they're just requesting another extension. I believe last time y'all granted them 180 days. If y'all were be so kind as to do that again, they're just still trying to figure out exactly what they want to do on their house that they're going to build on, lot that they're going to build on. Let's see if I pulled up the actual case number.
So what's the request?
You might want to to extend the Garner subdivision.
What's the request? What do they want?
Extend 180
Extend their
days.
minor division.
I moved it. We approve another extension for 180 days.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further? All in favor to extend the Garner subdivision 180 more days, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay.
That's the fastest one we had. You done good, Bubba.
I wasn't even prepared.
And so, Commissioners and Mr. Chairman, for the work session preceding the August meeting, I think it would probably be, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. I think we probably should start that work session at 4 p.m. if that's agreeable to the chairman.
Okay.
Send an extra special notice for some IGMOs that can't read.
We will go through, that is August 5th or August 6th? August 5th.
You want to do it on the same day as our meeting?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I don't have enough time to advertise
Okay.
a prior date.
So 4 o'clock.
Yes, have a work session at 4 PM. And what we'll essentially do is the slides that we went through today, we'll go through it much more slowly, much more methodically. And we'll give the commission a standalone document of the overlay itself as well as the slides as early as possible in advance for your.
And a map.
Sir?
And a map.
And a map. And I
With an
think-
aerial photograph.
Commissioners, I think what.
In color. Hey, could you please get yourself a color copy here?
Yes, Commissioners.
IT,
Thank
do you
very
hear
much.
that?
Do you want me to go buy you one at Home Depot? I mean, at
Office
Sam's?
In that case, make it a Konica. Commissioners, I think what I'll do is tomorrow morning, I'll give you a courtesy copy of the slides you saw today, and I think that'll be a good precursor to what we'll see in August.
I think so. The one thing to remember is, we've barked down this trail a number of times, and nothing gotten there. And,
yes, sir.
And I think sometimes the KISS system is good. I like what you've done, but if we start getting a lot of pushback, I'm more concerned about the form than the actual types of businesses. And when I say I think
yes, sir.
most of what we're hearing is, not do I care if a restaurant's there or a retail shop is there, but let's not have it look like Hamburger Alley, Airport
Sure.
Boulevard, et cetera. So let's, make sure we focus on the form.
And I'll tell you what, Commissioner, I'll conclude with this, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. One thing I will clarify that we really didn't have the time to illuminate today. This overlay does not change, nor does it request changing the underlying zoning of any piece of property along Greeno Road. This is an overlay, which is a text amendment to the zoning ordinance, but this is not proposing any underlying zoning.
Which means you have your old rights or the new rights, your choice.
So, exactly. So, the uses that are allowable as zoned now will still be applicable. There will be just additional requirements over top of those allowable uses.
Are
Thank
you
sir.
going to notify the public, especially those along and adjacent to that overlay district,
So,
that we're going to have a meeting at 4 o'clock? Let me tell you where I'm going with it. Because, and I agree with Lee. When the time comes to where the pushback starts, and you're going to say, okay, we're going to have a meeting at 4 o'clock on the day of our regularly scheduled meeting, you may not end up being through in an hour. So how are we going to deal with that as opposed to having it on a day where it's a standalone meeting? And those are the ones to me that make the most sense.
And Commissioners, we can debate this here, but what I think probably is that because of the placement on the agenda, that would be the first item on the agenda anyway. And so I think that we'll just simply carry right over into the meeting. We'll just pause for a moment to convene the meeting and then carry on over. So what I'll do is I'll do the best job I can to structure that, knowing that at some point we'll pause, convene, and then carry on. I think that the work session will be very methodical, where we go through the parts and pieces, and then when we convene the meeting, we have a formalized presentation for the public. But I think what I'll ask Emily to do is we can make an Everbridge posting as quickly as we can to advise the public that there will be a work session at 4 p.m. on August 5th. Thank you, Commissioners.
Can I invite you to White Meadows to see the beautiful street that we have? Please come to White Meadows anytime, so you can see it's beautiful when you go to meet like this, and you see the sunset straight, you can take pictures. It's the most beautiful place.
Where?
It's where we do
There's a lot of people look at Bay Meadows.
A lot of us are from the street. I know that it was an informal thing. I don't want to keep you at all. My wife keeps texting me to come home. Just 30 seconds. They keep referring to the Twin Beach PUD. Nothing has been built there yet. So we do not know what impact that's going to have on the area at all. Nothing has been built there. No person lives there. No cars are coming off of there right now. It's purely the construction that's been done. So just please keep that.
It is developed,
Thank you.
not been built.
Thank you, Nancy, for your service.
No, no.
We don't want to do another one.
wait a minute, and I did. But what really concerns me is those of you who know highway people in the state need to get with them, but because I know right now on 181, we're hoping to get it 4-lane. It will be, if all of these motions go through, it will need to be 6-lane. Y'all have the, which one over here? That clump area, which was a 1913. We have 1930, 1904, 1905, all going to 181. How am I ever going to get out on 181 from Bay Mix? So, I don't think you can put enough traffic lights.
There could be a traffic light available in the near future.
Well, it needs to be, but I'm concerned about all the others going into 181 too. It's going to be a nightmare. But I thank you, those of you who waited to hear what I had to say.
Thank you.